Hi everyone, please subscribe to my channel. Blood Immortal. See playlist for other chapters and novels. Join now our Telegram channel now and enjoy exclusive early access. t.me/blood_immortal_official. I do not translate the novels. Credits goes to original translator and author of the novel. I only make it as an audiobook so it would be easier to just listen while doing other things. Credits goes to the author of the novel. I convert stories to audiobook for mental health, for multitasking purpose, for accessibility and time saving. Listening to audiobook is also beneficial for people who have disability. It improves our listening skills and improve our English comprehension, vocabulary and other things. So, thank you for listening. Thank you and thank you very much for your support. Chapter 841. I am the strongest through all eternity. Chapter 841. I am the strongest through all eternity. Where has that human gone to? Fault was caught in a fluster right now after being surrounded by the two utmost beings from both fronts. But, when he took a closer look, he realized that the human had suddenly disappeared since God knows when. Where has he gone to? Fault looked intently for him left and right. All living beings would instinctively develop a sense of insecurity towards the unknowns. This was especially the case towards someone like this human. In the eyes of Fault, this guy was evil beyond anything else, and shouldn't be looked at with a normal point of view. Instantly, Fault's heart skipped a beat as a tremendous power slammed out from his sides. When Fault turned around, he saw the Ancient One packing a punch with a monstrous might at him. Bam! Receiving this punch, Fault's body exploded out intensely. This punch possessed an incredibly destructive power that burst forth, wreaking havoc all over Fault's body. Ancient One, you can't do this to me. I've once helped you before. Fault yelled out. That half-crippled body of his seemed to have been entirely destroyed in the hands of the Ancient One. He then churned his powers furiously and repaired it instantly, having it heal up back to new. However, the strength of the Ancient One did cause Fault to feel in a little peril right now. To think that the Ancient One would have turned stronger after being out of the picture for 10,000 years. HMPH. Fault, pitting yourself against my master leaves only death for you. The Ancient One's might was supreme as he snorted out coldly. The entire void exploded out from that. A duel between utmost beings wasn't something that ordinary humans could take part in. With every single punch, a single part of the world could be destroyed instantly. For the beings such as the Fox race, if not for the fact that the Ancient One and the others had tried to reign in their auras, the auras alone would be able to crush them into mere bits. As an utmost being of the ancient race, to think that you would dare acknowledge someone from the human race as your master. This is an utter humiliation. Holy FCK, stop whacking. At this moment, Fault did not have any chance of fighting back at all. Yes, he might be an utmost being of the ancient race. However, facing up against two utmost beings was practically taking his life away. All ancient eternal. Fault burst out in rage as he held up the heavens with both hands, and an eternal aura burst forth from him. Across all ancient times, the ancient race was the only one that was eternal. Everything else would eventually disappear in the sands of time. But, just at this moment, a gigantic palm that was like a cattail leaf fan descended down from the sky and slapped onto Fault's head. Bam! Oppression. This was downright oppression. If it were a one-on-one fight, Cruel might not be able to take down Fault. But, even if it were a one-on-one with the Ancient One, Fault would definitely be beaten to a pulp. Fault's body was like a bullet that was dug deep into the ground right now. The entire earth began to crack out like the back of a turtle's shell. Every single crack extended into deep crevasses that spread out in all directions. Ancient One, don't you go overboard. Fault's enraged roar boomed out deep down from the abyss dug in the ground. He hadn't expected something as such to happen to him. He raised his head and looked at the two figures in the sky while his eyes flashed with a grim look. He knew that things weren't going to end this easily this time around. Faced against two utmost beings, he did not stand a single chance of victory at all. This was especially the case now that the Ancient One had returned and was serving that human. This was going to be quite the blow for the ancient race. No, I've got to think of a way to escape. Otherwise, I might really die right here. When the members of the Fox race saw how Fault was being suppressed so badly, all of them held their breaths in excitement. No one dared to breathe out at all. This was all too explosive in their minds. If they hadn't witnessed this for themselves, they would have found it hard to believe that these past utmost beings of the ancient race would be helping them. At this moment, their hearts were all bubbling with curiosity. Who in the world was that human? To think that he could even subjugate the utmost beings of the ancient race. This was something absolutely inconceivable for the beings of the thousands of races. Boom! Fault floated out gently from that deep abyss beneath as he glared at the two utmost beings with a sharp gaze. You guys will suffer due retribution for defecting to the human side. The day the heavens will awakens, you will pay the price for your actions. Arg! At that moment, Fault suddenly screamed out as a boundless aura surged out from his body. A series of eternal air currents wrapped around his body. Every single eternal air current carried with it a force which seemed enough to destroy the entire world. Pishu, Pishu, like giant pythons, the eternal air currents wrapped themselves one another. Before they knew it, Fault was gripping onto a long spear. Tao of destruction, Fault's hands trembled as he roared out. As he pierced out with that spear, a bright flash of light shone out. Ancient One, cruel, you guys want to take down your utmost. That will have to depend on whether you have the capabilities. This is a legendary weapon that is given by the heaven's will. Even if you're the Ancient One, so what? This single spear of Fault contained thousands of Tao within it. The moment he deployed it, it sent forth a devastating aura as ripples began to blossom out in the air like flowers. Using an abnormal method, it caged up the Ancient One and cruel within. All of you can go to hell. All ancient impertinence. Revolution of the heaven's will. On the tip of Fault's spear, a reincarnation millstone appeared suddenly. This reincarnation millstone let off a bright radiance as though all the reincarnations of the infinite worlds were captured within it. A series of mysterious air currents burst forth from this reincarnation millstone and bolted out towards the two utmost beings. The Ancient One was composed. You're not his opponent. Leave this to me. Cruel stood behind the Ancient One and nodded his head silently. Fault, I've said this before 10,000 years ago. You're too reliant on the heaven's will. Because of that, your strength will always be the weakest amongst the utmost beings. Today, I shall have you know of the importance of your own personal strength. Even 1,000 of those treasures wouldn't be able to endure a single palm strike of mine. Boom! At this moment, the Ancient One took a step forth while a titanic illusory figure floated behind him. N-O-V-E in .c Ohm. Utmost being's body. When Fault caught sight of this illusory figure, his face changed as though it was filled with incredulity. That's right. This is the highest achievement an utmost being can ever attain, the utmost being's body. This is something you will never be able to achieve in all of eternity. A boundless palm descended from the sky with 5 fingers as thick as mountains individually. Gripping together tightly, the 5 fingers were akin to a claw as they grabbed out at the reincarnation millstone. Dong! The air current that was wrapping around the reincarnation millstone began to explode out one after another as though they had just met some unstoppable obstacle, before turning into dust. Impossible! How can this be possible? When Fault caught sight of the color drained from his face as he could not believe what had just happened. Nothing is impossible. You will never be able to understand the reason why an utmost being is termed as an utmost being. In these past 10,000 years, while your utmost has remained silent, the improvement of your utmost has definitely been way further than any of you. I, the Ancient One, am the heavens. I am the ancient race's strongest in all eternity. Boom! A claw that covered the entire sky as though it was some unworldly demon's descent appeared. When the surrounding fox race beings caught sight of that colossal claw, they all shivered in fear. That aura was simply way too formidable. In their eyes, this was no different from the arrival of doomsday. To think that the Ancient One would be this strong. Even Lin Fan felt rattled over this. He hadn't seen the Ancient One go all out before. And right now, the battle prowess given off by the Ancient One was turning out to be extremely sick. Perhaps even that evil lord wouldn't be a match for a single move at all. No, you are a traitor. Our ancient race does not have an utmost being such as yourself. Anything under the heavens will belongs to it. And yet, you covet on shaking the position of the heavens will. This is outright heresy. Go to hell. Fault screamed out as green veins popped out of his head. That berserk aura of his was even causing the entire world to start shaking due to it. As he waved his spear forth, the entire world was faced with a power of annihilation. Chapter 842, Dead End. Chapter 842, Dead End. Under this claw, any resistance would be futile. The face of the Ancient One was calm. When he looked at Fault, there was even a trace of sorrow in his eyes. Creak, creak, sounds of cracking appeared as Fault's spear began to break down under the mighty claw grip of the Ancient One. The Ancient One gave a loud roar and gripped it ferociously, grabbing the entire void in his palms. Ugh! The tremendous amount of power gushed out ferociously as Fault cried out tragically while his body exploded out. If not for the fact that he had the eternal God seat, he would have long died under the power of this single attack from the Ancient One. How could this be? We're both utmost beings. Yet, how is it that you possess such strength? Fault yelled out in disbelief while his eyes let out a look of utmost incredulity. In Fault's mind, he could not get how the Ancient One could be this strong, so strong that he couldn't even defend at all. The Ancient One's lips curled into a grin. However, that grin was ever so sinister. This is the meaning of difference. You will only have the qualifications to understand why this is so when you can actually understand what it all means. When the Ancient One looked at the miserable state Fault was in right now, he replied indifferently. The moment Fault heard this, he nearly spat out a mouthful of old blood. He had the feeling that the Ancient One was belittling him. But, when Fault looked at the Ancient One and then at Cruel, he suddenly felt a feeling of fear rise in his heart. He knew that there was no chance of him beating the both of them. But, if the other side wanted his life, they would undoubtedly be dreaming too. Ancient One, I, Fault, may have lost to you today, so you can say anything you'd like. But, the day will come when both of you will get your due comeuppance. Fault said with a hateful face, then stepped out and entered the endless void. I am an utmost being. While you guys may be stronger than I am, wanting to keep me here isn't something you're capable of just yet. Just wait. You guys will just wait and see. By now, half of Fault's body had already stepped into the void. The faces of the Ancient One and Cruel changed as they stretched out their hands wanting to drag him out of the void. But, they were all utmost beings. Even if the Ancient One and Cruel had what it took to crush the other party, they were evidently far from what it took to be able to hold back an utmost being who wished to flee. Haha, don't waste your efforts now. If I wish to leave, there's no one who can stop me. Bam, and just at this moment, a pair of hardened fists slammed out and punched onto Fault's face directly. While these fists might look ordinary, they left Fault's face splattered with blood. Blood-bursting fist of the North Star. Every single fist would hit the flesh and cause blood to burst forth. Thankfully, yours truly had the wisdom of foresight to know that you would attempt to run away, and have been long hidden in the void, awaiting you. Lin Fan walked out of the void. The affairs of the evil lord had left a deep lasting memory in Lin Fan's mind. Therefore, when Fault was still fighting with the Ancient One and Cruel, he had long hidden himself in the void. This single punch not only had Fault's entire face turning red, it even caused an explosion. A series of blood streams sprayed out, looking exceptionally horrendous. Damn it, Fault hadn't expected that this human would have been hiding within the void. For a moment or so, he was angered so badly that he nearly exploded out. What are you still waiting for? Hurry up and grab onto this fella. Lin Fan waved out with his hands as the Ancient One and Cruel rushed up ferociously. You guys are really way too much. You shall wait and see what your utmost can do. Fault's heart skipped a beat. While he was infuriated, he did not dare to think twice at this moment. Even if he had taken a free punch from Lin Fan, there was nothing he could do about that. Fault knew that he would definitely die if he had continued lingering here. By that time, that would be the true tragedy. Dimensional shift. Fault roared out and deployed an unparalleled mystic art as he dove right into the void. But, it wasn't long before yet another tragic cry rang out. What's this? Just what in the world is this sh*t? A figure dropped out of the void, and accompanying it was a thick mist that shrouded him. While this mist might look seemingly normal, there were a series of spirit figures within it. At this moment, the spirit of Bigra was unleashed. You bloody brain-dead FCK. To think that you would rush to my face. Aren't you just courting death? It's been a long time since the spirit of Bigra had struck. At this moment, he was bearing an equally insatiable hunger as he unleashed his ultimate move. While Fault's face might look calm, there was a strong look of shock revealed in his eyes. Within his body was a thick mist that he couldn't purge out no matter how he tried as it slammed into his heart. That resolute and firm inner heart of his actually had a feeling of breaking apart under this slamming. This was something unimaginable for Fault. He was an utmost being of the ancient race, with a cultivation state that was tantamount to the heavens. How could this mist here produce such strange effects in his body? Highs. Bigra, it has been a long time since you've taken the center stage. To think that your powers would have turned this strong already. Lin Fan looked at Fault's face and could not help lamenting. Boss, it's been a long time for me staying inside. If I didn't continue improving, I wouldn't even be a match for that Thunder Trainer King soon anymore. The spirit of Bigra said. Right now, the Thunder Trainer King was in seclusion to comprehend that great Buddha's light of purification. If he were to successfully comprehend its wisdom, the Thunder Trainer King would definitely skyrocket in strength and turn into a reforming Buddha Lord. Given that position and those powers, the difference between them would be like that of heaven and earth. Bigra, you wish to surpass me? I don't think you'll have that chance in this lifetime. November LBJNN. Just at this moment, the Thunder Trainer King appeared. But, Lin Fan could tell that there was something different about the Thunder Trainer King now. That aura of the Buddha race around him was as radiant as the afternoon sun that shone brightly up in the sky. Boss, I'm now the reforming Buddha Lord. The Thunder Trainer King grinned calmly and pointed down at a lotus seat that rose beneath his feet. When that short little figure stood up on the lotus seat, it did look a little strange. Utmost being of the ancient race. He's so strong. Oh, how I wish. When the reforming Buddha Lord caught sight of Fault at this moment, his eyes sparkled with an endless gleam. This was an utmost being. For the reformed Buddha Lord who loved training up others, how alluring was this? When Fault caught sight of these two fellas who had just popped out of nowhere, his heart was rattled. This was especially the case for that short little fella. He had a bad feeling about him. The expression coming forth from his eyes was a little creepy. All of you, go back and rest first. I've got something big to do. Lin Fan swept his robes and sent the reforming Buddha Lord back into his paradise. No, I don't want to leave. I want to train, the reforming Buddha Lord cried out. He had finally met an utmost being. How could he give up just like this? But as far as Lin Fan was concerned, he had to kill this Fault no matter what. He wasn't that much experience points short right now. If he killed this guy, he might be able to level up. Therefore, disregarding how hard the reforming Buddha Lord begged, he was still kept into the paradise by Lin Fan without any chance of resistance. At this moment, Fault's entire body quivered in fear. He could feel a mysterious surge of energy that was filling up his heart. There was even a strong sense of lust that was bursting forth from the depths of his heart furiously. Throb. At that moment, Fault suddenly realized that the area of his groin felt like exploding out as his breathing got hurried. This. Chapter 843. The dignity of the utmost beings is entirely gone. Chapter 843. The dignity of the utmost beings is entirely gone. What's wrong with Fault? At this moment, the surrounding Fox race beings had this thought popping up in their minds. They could tell that there was something different about the expression on Fault's face. That authoritative body of his was breaking out in shivers, as though something had happened. But, they clearly did not spot anything happening. Why would the utmost being Fault turn like this all of a sudden? Pishu. At this moment, Fault jerked his head around furiously. Those bloodshot eyes of his which were filled with an endless lust caused the hearts of the Fox race beings to skip a beat. It was as though there was a part of their body that were being voyeured at right now. In fact, they had discovered that as the gaze of the utmost being Fault passed by their bodies, it had eventually lingered down on their lower bodies. It can't be, right? The Fox race beings could not help but break into a cold sweat. All of this was way too horrifying. Arg hhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. Lin Fan shrugged his shoulders. Yours truly is just standing right here. What could I have done to you? Alright, let me explain to all of you guys. At this moment, the spirit of Bigra jumped out and opened his mouth. From his mouth, he spat out a cloudy smoke that slowly transformed into a whiteboard. N-O-V-E in .c ohm. It was as though the spirit of Bigra had turned into a teacher or something right now. Alright, everyone please look over here. Let me explain just what is it you're seeing here. Good afternoon, everyone. I am called the spirit of Bigra, and am a pill spirit that was evolved from a pill. And of course, this power of Bigra here is none other than my masterpiece. After swallowing the power of Bigra, the first sensation would be the flushing red of one's face. Now, if everyone would just take a look, the face of the utmost being Fault is displaying the first reaction right now. The spirit of Bigra had transformed into a lecturer, and was now describing his own effects right now. On the other hand, Fault's heart was thumping furiously. He could already sense himself losing control towards this mist, which had taken over his heart completely. And now, the second reaction would be the intense sweeping of one's gaze. At this point, he is seeking for prey. Everyone, check it out. The eyes of the utmost being Fault are darting about right now, aren't they? The spirit of Bigra asked. That's right. The Fox race beings could not help but nod their heads in agreement like obedient students who were listening attentively. They nodded their heads repeatedly, feeling extremely mystified. And the third reaction is going to be outrageous. He will then let out some carnal lust, leading to his groin area protruding up straight into the heavens. Look, just like that. The spirit of Bigra pointed out at the crotch of the utmost being Fault and explained. Wow, when the Fox race beings caught sight of this, they could not help but gasp out. At this point, the female empress was already entirely flabbergasted. This was clearly the most dangerous moment. Why had things suddenly changed like this? And at this moment, Fault could only feel his groin swelling up with an intolerable sensation. There was a fiery blaze that was burning within his body as though it could burst out at any moment. Cough, cough. Now, this fourth reaction is going to be heaven-defying now. He is going to lose complete control over his instincts. Anything that's available in the world will be something that he can poke. And this penetrative poking will be far from ordinary. It can practically cause the gods and ghosts to all weep over it. This is something that one can barely resist. There, check it out. He's going to make his move. The spirit of Bigra yelled out. Wow, the beings of the fox race yelled out together. It was as though their views about life, the world, and values were all refreshed at this point. Fault howled out furiously like a wild beast. His entire body was flushed red as though it was burning with fiery flames. Those eyes that were filled with an endless lust were glaring right at Lin Fan. There was only a single thought within Fault's eyes right now, vent. And his target was none other than Lin Fan. The Ancient One and Cruel heaved in a deep breath each. Both of them had already witnessed the power of the spirit of Bigra from within the paradise. It was just insanely twisted. I'm going to poke you to death. At this moment, Fault had lost his sanity entirely as he grabbed out wildly with his palms and yelled while clutching towards Lin Fan. Holy FCK, out of this many people, to think that he would have taken a liking to yours truly. Lin Fan yelled out while kicking out with his leg furiously. True Origin's crushing kick. This leg could be considered as one that could shake the entire world, and cause gods and ghosts alike to cry out. This was a single kick that was more terrifying than anything in the world combined. With a sinister feeling of utmost elegance, this kick floated over. Bam, ding, True Origin's crushing kick experience points plus 10,000. As for Fault, he had long since lost any sense of self. This single kick did not bring forth any effect on him. Holy FCK, Lin Fan shouted out. He hadn't expected that something as such would happen. Lin Fan had truly not tried the True Origin's crushing kick on any living being that had received the power of the spirit of Bigra yet. Initially, he thought that Fault would lose his fighting spirit. But, to think that it would cause him to get even more ferocious instead. Old bro, these are all useless. My powers have already improved such that these skills can no longer cause him any damage. The spirit of Bigra yelled out to Lin Fan. The moment Lin Fan heard this, his mind blew up. He wanted to cuss in return. But, all of a sudden, Fault had appeared before Lin Fan. Ancient One, Cruel, you guys, go. Lin Fan gave his hand a huge wave. But, to think that the Ancient One and Cruel would both retreat furiously while shaking their heads rapidly. In their eyes, having to hug together with this fella was simply way too disgusting. Hooli F***ck. Lin Fan was taken aback. Who would have thought that those two fellas would actually throw shade on Fault? You guys are the same beings as Fault. How can you guys scorn him as such? Seems like I've got no choice but to unleash my ultimate move then. Big Ancient Demon, come on out. Lin Fan yelled out and released the Big Ancient Demon immediately. The moment the Big Ancient Demon came forth, he roared in glory. He loved dueling the most, especially the one that had intense physical skin contact. Demon Emperor, take him down. Lin Fan waved with his hand. Who dares to be brazen? The Big Ancient Demon howled out in rage. However, his face changed immediately into one of shock as he could not help but proclaim, not again. That affair the previous time was something that the Big Ancient Demon would never forget at all. He had hugged together with the other fella and just whacked on. That single event had long created a deep, long-lasting trauma in the heart of the Big Ancient Demon. And just as the Big Ancient Demon was still lamenting in reluctance, Fault had already leapt over and pushed the Big Ancient Demon down onto the ground immediately. Damn it, I'm the Demon Emperor. How dare you push the Demon Emperor down onto the ground? The Big Ancient Demon jerked his body with a tyrannical aura overflowing from him as he pushed Fault down instead. All the surrounding fox race beings were long stupefied by now. They felt as though they had seen a ghost. As for the female empress, everything was way too fuzzy right now. If she hadn't witnessed this for herself, she wouldn't have believed this scene right now even at the death of her Big Ancient Demon. Good one, hold him right there. Lin Fan instantly took out a red brick from his storage. At this moment, what was needed was a good tight slap to his head with the brick before crushing the other party harshly. Come on, the Big Ancient Demon hollered out. As for the way this situation would play out, he was long familiar with it. HMPH. To think that this crotch thing would dare to cross at your emperor. This is just plain dreaming right now. The big ancient demon bellowed out and used all his strength to pin down Fault. So tragic. When the Ancient One and Cruel caught sight of Fault being pinned under, they could only shake their heads and sigh. There was completely no dignity left for the utmost beings. Chapter 844. Yet another eternal God seat. Chapter 844. Yet another eternal God seat. Boss, please hurry up with it. This utmost being Fault is still struggling to turn around and pin me down instead. I'm almost unable to hold him down anymore. The big ancient demon yelled out. At the same time, he felt exceptionally pained in his heart. He wondered how he was made to face situations like these consistently as a demon emperor. But thankfully, it had been a long time since he had fallen. Hence, the outside world has long forgotten about him. Otherwise, if his fellow race beings were to catch sight of him like this, he would have truly lost any bit of face he had. Alright, just hold on for a little longer. I'm coming, Lin Fan shouted out. Raising the brick high in one hand, he ran over excitedly. For the beings of the fox race, this scene, however, was extremely chilling to behold. Don't let the children see this. All of the adults of the fox race covered the eyes of the children. However, they were watching the scene unfold tastefully. This was a rare sight to behold for a million years. If they ever wanted to flaunt about something in the future, this would be totally worth it. The face of the female empress blushed red. When she saw how her disciple was watching fixatedly, she hummed softly and said, "Little kids shouldn't be watching this." "Master, I'm no longer a kid. I can watch this." For Zan Zan, this scene was truly that exciting. Right now, the big ancient demon was pressing right on top of Fault. He was using both his hands and feet together in order to restrict the movements of the other party. However, Fault was still thrusting his waist while trying to flip around. But, how could the big ancient demon possibly let him succeed? In the blink of an eye, Lin Fan appeared in the face of Fault. Looking at this utmost being who was lying on the ground and yelling out in retaliation, Lin Fan could not help but chuckle out. "Fault, I know that your consciousness is still present and fresh. It's just your physical body that's out of control, that's all. Had you ever thought that this day would happen to you as an utmost being of the ancient race?" Gra h. The utmost being Fault howled out with maddened red eyes that glared at Lin Fan with a death stare. It was exactly as Lin Fan had said. The consciousness of Fault was still present. It was just that he was no longer in control of his body. The lust that was kept deep within his body was unleashed thoroughly like a raging, relentless river that was gushing forth. There was only a single thought in his mind: pin the big ancient demon under him. But, no matter how hard Fault tried, he couldn't suppress the big ancient demon. In a situation like this, the big ancient demon could be considered an old-timer. Therefore, he naturally knew how to deal with it. No matter how much you scream, it's all going to be useless. Everything about you shall belong to yours truly later on. Your cultivation state, essence spirit, paradise, etc. Everything shall be converted into nutrients, and from this day forth, the world shall have one less utmost being yet again. The ancient race is bound to fall. Lin Fan wielded the red brick in his hands and searched for a good position, ready to FCK this guy up. November LBJNN. Peok. A direct slap on the head knocked him down so normally without any fuss. At this moment, Fault's head tilted to the side as he fainted over entirely. Alright, job's done. Lin Fan clapped his hands together. The big ancient demon took in a deep breath and could feel that he had expended all his strength earlier on. Under circumstances as such, Fault was truly way too intense. The utmost being lost. For a moment, all the beings of the fox race gasped out while remaining somewhat silent. Then, they all erupted out into cheers. To them, this was clearly something impossible. In their hearts, the utmost beings were unparalleled. Towards the assault of the utmost being this time around, they long had a rough idea of their outcomes, which was to be killed by the utmost being. Even with the female empress, it was all seeming to be useless. But at this moment, when they saw the utmost being lying there like a dead corpse, everyone was absolutely startled. The masses rubbed their eyes, thinking that they might have seen something wrong. But, that corpse lay there obediently, without any falsehoods at all. Boom! At this moment, the void exploded out as a gigantic tear appeared. "Be-starred, how dare you treat an..." At this moment, another figure appeared. This was yet another utmost being. The masses turned their heads over. Lin Fan, on the other hand, blinked his eyes curiously. Who was this experience points baby that was coming over to die again? Now that fault had already been suppressed by him, this guy was still coming alone. Wasn't he just looking to die? The utmost being, Desolate, was feeling infuriated right now. He was born from the same body as Fault, and they had an innate telepathic connection between them. The moment he sensed that Fault was in trouble, he tore through the void to come over and assist him. But, when he appeared out of the void, he found several pairs of eyes glaring at him intently. Utmost being, Desolate, Cruel spoke out first. Utmost being Desolate flung his head around and was startled. He hadn't expected it to be Cruel. It's been 10,000 years. Yet another voice boomed out. Desolate tensed up and felt his heart skip a beat before he yelled out, "Ancient One." This was something that was absolutely impossible for Desolate. He was still pretty composed on seeing Cruel greater than. After all, that guy had already betrayed the ancient race. But, the Ancient One had fallen 10,000 years ago. How could he possibly appear here right now? Seems like yet another utmost being has come knocking on the door. The moment Lin Fan saw this, his lips curled into a grin. Just what in the world was up today? To think that his luck would be this good that the enemies were sending themselves up the doorsteps one after another. Mother *** Sea King Human King. Even though Desolate hadn't met with Lin Fan, the Heavens Will had pumped down his orders. They were extremely clear about every nook and cranny of the Mother ** Sea King Human King's features. And, with this single glance over, it was clear that that was the Mother Fate Sea King Human King. This, Desolate gulped down his saliva. Even though he should be fearful of nothing within this world as an utmost being, he could not help but feel something wrong about this situation right now. 1, 2, 3. While Desolate might admit to his personal strength, he did not have that much confidence to think that he could fight 1 on 3 and come out victorious. May I ask what the issue is? Lin Fan raised his head over. If this guy was here for a fight, then he might as well come right on. Lin Fan couldn't have asked for anything more. For a moment or so, Desolate was silent. He then looked over at Fault, who was lying there motionlessly. It was evident that he had been defeated. And that fella above Fault, why in the world did he look so much like the Demon Emperor? Wait, no, that fella was the Demon Emperor. Holy FCK. Just what in the world was going on? Why were there so many powerful beings appearing here at one go? And by the looks of it, all of them looked like they wanted to go at him. It's nothing, just taking a quick look. You guys carry on. Without any hesitation, Desolate rushed back into the void he had barely popped out from, and disappeared after leaving those final words and nothing else behind. Lin Fan was confounded right now. Was he going to leave just like that? Wasn't that too spineless? Even though he really wanted to keep Desolate around, there was truly nothing much they could do right now if that guy wanted to escape. But, one might as well forget it. Even if he could leave now, he couldn't run away forever. Without any hesitation, Lin Fan then kept Fault into his paradise. The reforming Buddha Lord, who was kept in the paradise, scrambled over with his stumpy feet the moment he saw this. However, the mythical parasol tree's tree branches shot out immediately and wrapped Fault around. Mythical parasol tree, let me train him up a little first. Don't do it, the reformed Buddha Lord yelled out. But, it was all too late. All FCK your mother. The tree branches started moving and sucked out everything from the body of the utmost being immediately. Powers, paradise, essence spirit, universal elixir, etc. In that instance, everything disappeared with the winds. Bam! All of a sudden, Fault's body broke down and was turned into a pile of flesh that was absorbed into the paradise. An eternal god seat floated out and hovered gently within the paradise, emanating a boundless brilliance. When Lin Fan saw this, he curled out with a slight grin on his lips. Yet another eternal god seat. This meant that he would be able to craft out yet another unparalleled powerful being once more. Chapter 845, all upgraded. Chapter 845, all upgraded. Ding. Congratulations on killing utmost being of the ancient race, Fault. Ding. Experience points increased by countless. Ding. Cultivation state leveled up. Ding. Obtained eternal god seat 1. Ding. Obtained 3 trillion Shengyang pills. Ding. Obtained 10 Dao weapons. Ding. Obtained supreme graded utmost treasure, supreme god spear. ... After killing Fault, the rewards were innumerable, especially his own experience points, which skyrocketed entirely. And unexpectedly, Lin Fan obtained a supreme graded utmost treasure. This wasn't something that Lin Fan had thought of. Seemed like the one true way to increase one's fortune was truly to slay utmost beings. These utmost beings were one richer than the other. This was practically heaven-defying. Ding! Congratulations on leveling cultivation state to Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God State. Shing! At this very moment, the spirit chi within the entire world began to rumble. What's going on? Could he be breaking through at this very moment? When the female empress caught sight of Lin Fan's transformations right now, she was taken aback, evidently somewhat in disbelief. The level at which the spirit chi of the world was going berserk is extraordinary. There were streaks of purple thunderbolts that were flashing out across the skies. Haha, seems like I'm going to break through now. I can finally get that utmost cultivation state. Lin Fan had been waiting for this day for a long, long time now. To think that it would finally descend upon him. At this moment, Lin Fan's paradise quaked furiously. All the living beings within floated up into the void as spirit chi gushed right in. Even those crystallized walls of the paradise were cracking and regrouping repeatedly, expandingly outwards continuously. 100 miles, 1,000 miles, 10,000 miles, 100,000 miles, several million miles outwards. The crystallized walls of the paradise were like crystals right now that gave off a bedazzling gleam. Every single piece of the crystallized wall seemed to possess a life of its own, as though each of them were a world of their own. All the living beings within the paradise began to transform endlessly. They roared out furiously as their bodies spun around, causing a boundless aura to burst forth from these living beings ferociously. Upgrade. All of them were upgrading right now. Every single rise in cultivation state would cause an immense change to happen. And the gap between crossing over from a divine celestial level 9, 8 desolates united state to eternal God state was one that was tantamount to the heavens. The spirit chi within the paradise was way stronger than before by millions of times. In fact, it was even starting to materialize into physical entities. Every single living being was breathing at this moment. With this many living beings, every single breath was just like an ocean. Yin-yang reincarnation to complete an unparalleled dragon's body. The 10th prince and those 4 dragon emperors who had been cultivating within Lin Fan's paradise unleashed the ancestor dragon's reincarnation with everything they had in this instant. The ancestor dragon's reincarnation was one of the few secret skills of the colossal dragon race, and was also the most difficult of them to cultivate. But, once it was successfully cultivated, the might that was unleashed would be enough to shake the entire world. Roar! A series of dragons' roars boomed out within the paradise. The 10th prince and the others transformed into colossal dragons. Each of these colossal dragons had a distinct separation between yin and yang, with a torrential momentum. A formidable aura was exuded from them ferociously. Unparalleled dragon's body. Creak. The body of the yin-yang dragon began to tear apart as those extremely tough dragon scales began to shatter. However, in the blink of an eye, they had recombined. And, the recombined scales were extremely shiny. There was even an incredible, mysterious energy that was cruising through them as though the scales were a series of miniature worlds of colossal dragons on their own. Amongst them, a series of colossal dragons soared within the sky while roaring out, causing an infinite amount of dragon chi to fill up within the world. Raging desolate colossal dragon's body. Boom! An explosion boomed out. Several 100,000 feet long colossal dragons were swiveling around the paradise. At this moment, the entire paradise was just like a world of colossal dragons. As for the 10th prince and the others, their auras were only surging up furiously. Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God State. Sensing the changes within his paradise, Lin Fan was overwhelmed with joy. This was a huge leap of improvement. All the living beings within the paradise had upgraded, and the 10th prince and the others had even crossed right into a Divine Celestial Level 10 state. Even though they were just normal Eternal God State beings, this was still a remarkable improvement within the ancient saint world. The mythical parasol tree blossomed out and grew once more. Those thick tree branches spread out through the entire paradise as those green leaves filled the entire sky. Spirit chi flowed endlessly while an abundant life force gushed out. With just a single breath, one would take in an endless amount of saint spirit chi, cultivating countless Shangyang pills. The reforming Buddha Lord opened up his own sect and started teaching. With a single finger pointing forth, countless reforming sutras flew out and danced in the sky, before turning into golden raindrops that poured down on the paradise. Big Ancient Demon, upgrade. Fuse with the Eternal God Seat. ROARRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRRR seed of fault was just right for the big ancient demon to upgrade to an utmost being. After killing Saint, Lin Fan had also obtained dozens of Dao weapons. At this moment, he crushed them all and turned the weapon spirits within into primordial energy to fuse into the body of the big ancient demon. Don't kill me, I'm a supreme graded utmost treasure. I'm willing to serve you. I'll bow down to you. The supreme graded utmost treasure, supreme god spear, begged profusely. He was a 10,000-year-old weapon spirit, whose intellect would not lose out to any living being. At this moment, he had realized that something was not right. If he were devoured, he would disappear from the world entirely. And with that, everything he had gained in the past 10,000 years would dissipate as well. I know everything about the ancient race. I'm a sacred item of the ancient race, with countless mystical skills in my possession. I only pled for you not to kill me. A long spear that possessed an unbridled might hovered around in the paradise. However, it was shivering at this moment as it pleaded for life desperately. Come and turn into a part of your demon emperor. The big ancient demon extended his hands and grabbed at the supreme god spear. No, I'll fight it out with you. The supreme god spear roared out as it pierced out straight away, causing the entire paradise to howl with the gusts formed. Creak. Right now, the might of the big ancient demon was unmatched, carrying a torrential fortitude. He grabbed out with his claw and caught the supreme god spear in his palms. As he pinched, the weapon spirit of the supreme god spear wailed out tragically and was turned into its source energy. The big ancient demon opened his mouth ferociously and sucked it into his tummy instantly. A piercing spear intent broke up into the heavens, breaking through the world directly. The tremendous power had the hearts of the living beings in shock. After the big ancient demon had been turned into a weapon spirit by Lin Fan, he had devoured countless weapon spirits within this body of his. His powers had long turned earth-shattering, such that no one could resist at all. Suppress. Lin Fan waved down his hand and caused the eternal god seed to enter the body of the big ancient demon directly. Upgrade. Xing. November LBJNN. The body of the big ancient demon tore down and was fused into the demon city entirely. On the other hand, the demon city soared into the sky as a boundless amount of demonic chi burst forth from it. The figure of a supremely powerful demon god stood tall within the world. Middle graded utmost treasure, upper graded utmost treasure, supreme graded utmost treasure. This was a straight path that soared right to the top. In fact, even though it had been upgraded into an utmost treasure, it didn't stop there as it continued to skyrocket further. Ding! Congratulations on owner for cultivating out a legendary weapon, 9 Heavens Demon World. Ding! Congratulations on owner for cultivating out a legendary weapon for the first time. Special mystery reward X1. Do you wish to redeem? I'll redeem it later. Now is the time for yours truly to upgrade first. Once Lin Fan set everything in motion, he started upgrading himself. This was moment he had been waiting for since a long time now. Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God State. This was the path that Lin Fan had been searching for while cultivating all this while. Female Empress, all of you retreat first. I'm going to upgrade now. At this moment, Lin Fan's body had already been surrounded by a berserk ball of spirit chi. When the female Empress caught sight of this, she did not hesitate as she swept her robes and covered up the countless living beings around, bringing them to leave with her entirely. Chapter 846. This is just skyrocketing. Chapter 846. This is just skyrocketing. You're really just trying to against the heavens. Far in the distance, the female Empress raised her head and looked over. The peerlessly beautiful face of hers was filled with a look of astonishment. This was a sign of someone leveling to the Divine Celestial Level 10 state. But by the looks of it, this was quite a lot more tyrannical than normal. The way the spirit chi of the heaven and earth was going berserk was way stronger than it was for her personally in the past, way stronger. The reverberations of everything that was happening right now were felt by every single powerful being within the ancient saint world. All of them looked into the distance. They could tell that a rampage was going on far across in the world where the spirit chi was rumbling immensely and had reached a peak state. Just what sort of a being is leveling up right now? This was the question that was central to the thoughts of many powerful beings. For some of the powerful beings, this was a good thing. This proved that the beings of the thousands of races would have another supremely powerful being amongst them. As for Desolate, who had just made his escape moments earlier, his face changed at the moment he felt this source of power. He then hurriedly bolted off to discuss this with the other utmost beings. Not long after, the remaining 5 utmost beings were looking at one another. It's the mother *C King Human King who is leveling up. This time around, I'm afraid he's entering the eternal God state. One of the utmost beings spoke up. This is something that we absolutely cannot tolerate. We have to step forth and take him down. Even without the powers of the eternal God seat, he had already created such a mess of our utmost beings. If he were to level up, wouldn't he just fly into the heavens? Who will be the one to go and stop him? I've already said this before, I'm not going. I'll sit here and wait for the infinite worlds to open up and the heavens will to descend. No matter how strong this mother *C king human king is, in the face of the heavens he will be nothing but an ant. Another utmost being set out. To be honest, he was feeling a little cautious about this human by now. Your utmost being here can feel that fault is already dead. He was defeated by that mother *C king human king. This is an intolerable blow for the ancient race. Desolate looked around at the utmost beings present. When none of them wanted to head forth, he barked out in rage, "Look at you guys. Are you still the utmost beings of the ancient race? Right now, that human is leveling up. This is the critical moment. Doesn't he just have the Ancient One, Cruel, and the Demon Emperor around him, that's all? If the 5 of us were to strike out together, it's not as though we'll lose, will we? Huh, Ancient One, huh, Demon Emperor, huh, Cruel." At this moment, the other 4 utmost beings exchanged glances with one another. Initially, they were a little moved. But, when they heard those words, their hearts palpitated. What kind of a huge joke was this? And the most startling fact for them was that the Ancient One was still alive. That was an utmost being from the same period as they were. There was no doubt about his strength, the strongest of the utmost beings. "If you guys don't want to go, I'll go. For the sake of the ancient race, so what if we were to fall? We must definitely not allow that human to level up," Desolate shouted out in anger. The other 4 utmost beings looked at Desolate and shrugged their shoulders helplessly. Those malevolent eyes that were glaring at Desolate had a clear meaning to them. "Go alone then." Desolate looked at the 4 other utmost beings and was so mad that his entire face was flushed red. He did not know what in the world was going on with these utmost beings. To think that a mere mother *C king human king would have them this wary. Did they still have any dignity as utmost beings? "Desolate, don't do this. The heavens' will is asleep right now. Back then, he had expended too much energy. He does not even know about what we're talking right now. Therefore, even if you bootlick him now, it's useless. If we go and seek out trouble with that human, even if we were to succeed, it would cost at least 3 of us. It's either you who falls, me who falls, or all of us who fall." Another utmost being said. The other utmost beings looked at one another and did not say anything more. "Right now, our main task is to use all we've got to suppress the Fire-Water Empress. We must not let the Fire-Water Empress out at all cost. No matter how strong that human is, he will not be able to break through the eternal barrier. All we have to do is await the awakening of the heavens will, after which, everything else will cease to matter." That's right, we utmost beings cannot afford to take another loss anymore. The mother *C king human king has already started building his foundation, and has 2 utmost beings by his side. Not only that, even the Demon Emperor may have already recovered. Even if we head over now, it will not aid in anything at all. And, if those fellas from the guarded ground were to pop up, our strength will pale in comparison. There's a likelihood that we might all die there instead. At that moment, utmost being Desolate sucked in a deep breath, feeling like he had just been convinced by them. If they were timid, they should just admit it. What was the point of saying so much more? At this moment, Lin Fan raised his head into the void and looked at the balls of spirit chi which were coiling around rampantly, having him caged up by a spirit chi typhoon. Instantly, all the pores in Lin Fan's body opened up as he took in a deep breath, taking in all the berserk spirit chi into his body. From the unknowns, Lin Fan had a feeling that he was now able to communicate with a mysterious place somewhere. That's the Eternal God Seat. Even among the Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God State beings, there were differences in strength. Those Divine Celestial Level 10 beings who could stand on par against the utmost beings could be counted with one's fingers. The guardians of the 4 guarded grounds were all Eternal God State beings who had attained the Eternal God Seats. As for the other living beings, even if they had reached Divine Celestial Level 10 state, they wouldn't be a match for the utmost beings. But, the Fire-Water Empress was an exception. She had evidently not attained an Eternal God Seat, yet her powers were stronger than any utmost being. Not only that, no one knew which race she was from. She is just the epitome of the term, sick. Boom. At this moment, a tremendous power of leveling up tore through the void, and within the endless void, an Eternal God Seat that was filled with an unparalleled godly might appeared. This Eternal God Seat was momentous. At the moment of its appearance, it seemed as though all living beings within the world must bow down under this Eternal God Seat. Holy FCK, seems like it's the real Eternal God Seat. But, is it only that B*TCH of a Fire-Water Empress who is able to turn that strong without even attaining the Eternal God Seat? Lin Fan was curious. However, he He did not have any way of finding out. He checked his systems panel. The column indicating his cultivation state was in a pending state. Cultivation state. Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God state. Leveling in progress. This was something that he could not figure out no matter how he thought about it. But, he had the system. With that, there might be a possibility that his strength could still continue to grow indefinitely. So what if he walked the path of the masses and went for obtaining the Eternal God seat? It was not as though that would restrict the path that yours truly could take later on. Lin Fan grabbed out with his hands at that Eternal God seat. Come on over. Yours truly is going to walk the path of the masses now. Lin Fan did not want to think too much anymore. Since things had come to this, he could just casually get the seat then. But all of a sudden, something startling happened to Lin Fan. It was as though that golden sparkling Eternal God seat in the void was resisting him. It bolted off into the depths of the void as though it wanted to get as far away from him as possible. There seemed to be some mysterious power that was tugging at the Eternal God seat, preventing him from obtaining the true Eternal God state. Holy FCK, are they looking down on yours truly? At this moment, Lin Fan was angered as he burst forth with all his powers and grabbed out towards that Eternal God seat. The more they didn't want yours truly to get it, the more he wanted to get his hands on it. Creak, the void exploded out as two explosive forces burst forth, tugging at one another. FCK, they're bullying me too intolerably. Lin Fan was totally riled up right now. Using his palm to cleave down, he sliced out through the heavens and earth. No matter what, he had to drag this Eternal God seat down. That boundless and infinite power blocked Lin Fan's attack entirely. Mysterious thin threads wrapped around the Eternal God seat and pulled at it furiously. Seemed like this was the reason why the beings of the thousands of races could not get their hands on this Eternal God seat. When they were leveling up, the Eternal God seat would evidently appear. Yet, it was pulled away by some mysterious force that just refused to let them get their hands on it. So, what could they do about it? FCK, this is the most critical juncture, and yet you bloody refuse to let yours truly soar. Yours truly will come at you. Ancient One, cruel, demon god, come and give me a hand. Pull this damned Eternal God seat down forcefully. Lin Fan was incensed. At the same time, this was something that had never happened before. November LBJNN. It was as though the existences from the unknowns hadn't expected that the living being who was leveling up this time around would be so difficult to deal with. Chapter 847, Consciousness Descending. Chapter 847, Consciousness Descending. The number of Eternal God seats has long been predetermined to be a fixed amount. It will forever be limited to be 12. However, all that will be for naught. Since our boss wants to attain an Eternal God seat right now, how dare they stop him? Even if we have to snatch at it, we'll grab one back for our boss. The Demon Emperor yelled out. That's right, so what if it's the rule of the heaven and earth? It's not as though we'll be afraid of that. The boundless strength of the Ancient One turned into a rope that tugged out at the Eternal God seat. Let's just fight them. A mere 12, that's not even enough to fit between my teeth. Lin Fan bellowed out. Just like that, 4 powerful beings were going at it fighting to get that Eternal God seat. Boom, a series of lightning flashes appeared. Each thunderbolt seemed to contain an unbridled power of destruction. Brazen, we are all eternal utmost beings, and you think a few thunderbolts are enough for you to act so audaciously? The Ancient One opened up his mouth and swallowed the few thunderbolts. It neither hurt nor scratched him, there was no feeling about it at all. 3 utmost powerful beings and a half utmost powerful being. The might of their actions was not one to be underestimated. And just like that, they were on even grounds with the existence that was controlling the Eternal God seats from the unknowns. For a moment or so, neither side relented as they just expended their energies awkwardly there. Lin Fan bellowed out as his aura rumbled with a gigantic palm strike that slammed out at the heavens, get over here. Boom, Lin Fan grabbed that Eternal God seat with a single hand, causing the entire world to tremble because of it. This was a robbery, a downright robbery. The existence within the unknowns was having an extremely huge headache. For the beings of the thousands of races, each time one of them was leveling up to Divine Celestial Level 10 state, he would release the Eternal God seat. But in reality, this was just for them to see and recognize how the Eternal God seat would always be up in the sky yet beyond their reach. They could only lust for it with their eyes. But, the current situation was something that was thoroughly unexpected. He hadn't expected that these uncouth creatures would actually be so uncivilized, and would just snatch it forcefully. You had better release it. Otherwise, one of these days, I'm going to whack you up so bad even your parents wouldn't recognize you. While both sides were just expending their strength endlessly, there was a limit to Lin Fan's patience. Pointing out at the heavens, he burst out, scolding in rage. Boom, boom. Hearing Lin Fan's insults, the existence within the unknowns could only send a few thunderbolts out as a form of protest against his words. Damn it. No matter what sh*t you are, not allowing yours truly to ascend means that you're not giving yours truly face. And, since you're not giving yours truly face, there's no need for yours truly to stand on courtesy with you. Spirit of Bigra, rush over and take a look at just what kind of nonsense is pitting themselves against yours truly. Lin Fan waved out and released the Spirit of Bigra. Instantly, a thick mist rose out and covered the entire world. It passed through the eternal God seat directly and continued ascending. Creak. But just at this moment, something unbelievable happened. That eternal God seat that gave off a boundless might suddenly gave off a cracking sound as multiple cracks appeared. It can't be, right? Lin Fan opened his mouth wide with astonishment. Pock. And just like that, the eternal God seat exploded out entirely right in Lin Fan's face. A series of sparkling essence glitters scattered down from the sky before dissipating entirely. Holy f***ck. Lin Fan shouted out what he was thinking. After fighting for a good half a day, this was all he had. Holy FCK. In order to refuse yours truly from obtaining the eternal God seat, you would destroy it. Fine, I'll give it to you being savage this time around. But, this seed of grudge is sowed between us now. Lin Fan did not say anything more. Since the eternal God seat was already broken, what else could he say? The moment the eternal God seat was broken, the world returned to normal. However, the leveling had to resume. Ding! Congratulations on leveling to Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God State. Cultivation State. Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God State. Pseudo. Experience points. 0.6 millionths. This personalized information panel, on the other hand, had Lin Fan nearly spitting out a mouthful of old blood. To think that at the end of it, there would be a pseudo tag. This was way too scammy. However, Lin Fan could feel a world of difference between his strength. His own power had climbed up step after step, reaching a point where he could have never ever mounted to in the past. The boundless amount of power cruised through his entire body as though a single fist of his would be enough to crush an entire world. And just at this moment, a strange series of voices came forth from all directions. Mother *C King Human King. Someone was talking about him. While the name came forth from the mouth of the other person, he could feel it with his heart. Was this an ability that he had gained after reaching Divine Celestial Level 10 state? Lin Fan raised his head and looked over into the distance. A strand of his consciousness bolted out and headed towards that direction. Eventually, the 5 utmost beings of the ancient race decided to not think about this matter anymore. This Mother *C King Human King. One of the utmost beings wanted to say something when his brows furrowed all of a sudden. To think that this strand of Lin Fan's consciousness would have arrived over here. Seemed like if one continuously prayed, their prayers would definitely be answered. The stronger one was, the more they would be able to sense these connections. Who's there? How dare you send your consciousness over here? The utmost being barked out fiercely. Oh, so, it's the last 5 of your remaining utmost beings that are missing me right now. Yours truly had thought that something big had happened, so I decided to come take a look. As Lin Fan's consciousness descended, even if he were faced with these 5 utmost beings, he did not show any signs of nervousness at all. Utmost being desolate, to think that you would be here. Back when you came to visit yours truly, why didn't you say anything and run off just like that? Could you have been scampering here to look for reinforcements? Lin Fan looked at Desolate and could not help but chuckle out. Mother *C King Human King, you've obtained the eternal God seat. One of the utmost beings asked with a cold voice. No, he hasn't. Even though that cultivation state is a Divine Celestial Level 10, he did not manage to obtain the eternal God seat. Ha ha ha, anyone without the eternal God seat is but an ant. Another utmost being laughed out wildly. HMPH, how dare you send your consciousness over here? Stay here then. The utmost being Desolate struck out immediately, wanting to crush Lin Fan into dust. But instantly, Lin Fan pointed out with his finger, causing the void to turn into a mirror that cracked out part by part, dissipating the powers of the utmost being Desolate immediately. Gosh, don't get all violent just on seeing me. Even though yours truly hasn't obtained an eternal God seat, my powers are not that much weaker than you guys. The next time we meet, you guys had better wipe your butts clean and prepare for yours truly to reap you guys in. Lin Fan burst out laughing loudly as though everything was within his control. Oh, has my exclusive property arrived? At this moment, a voice that was filled with an endless authority boomed out from the distance. The moment Lin Fan heard this, he kept back his smile. Why did this voice sound so familiar? To think that you would have reached this state after just a few years of not meeting. You're not the exclusive property of your empress here for nothing. Once your empress breaks out of this place, I'll definitely grace you with a good visit by then. Ha ha ha, this demonic laughter had Lin Fan shivering with chills running down his spine. All the pores on his body seemed to be exploding wide open. This was the FC King Firewater Empress. Lin Fan would never forget that scene from all those years ago. That was a humiliation of a lifetime for him to get pushed on forcefully by a girl in reverse. Not only that, he had to turn into the exclusive property of the other party. How could Lin Fan tolerate something as such? Your empress exclusive property, just wait patiently. Wait for your empress to break out of this place. The voice of the Firewater Empress rang out once more as though she had just met with something fun. However, her tone suddenly turned frosty, but, I hope that you've kept your body pure all this while. Otherwise, I'll have you know of the consequences. The moment Lin Fan heard this, his goosebumps stood up. Without saying anything more, he retracted his consciousness into his main body instantly. November LBJNN. Ha 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 ha, the Firewater Empress laughter boomed out across the entire ancient race base. The faces of the 5 utmost beings were extremely terrible right now. Seemed like it was only a matter of time before the Firewater Empress broke out of her seal. Chapter 848, That Little Tongue is Getting Sweeter. Chapter 848, That Little Tongue is Getting Sweeter. Gradually, peace returned to the world. Lin Fan was so scared that his balls were feeling a little sore. He had followed his consciousness over to put on an act in front of the 5 utmost beings. To think that he would be discovered by the Firewater Empress. Now that he had reached the Divine Celestial Level 10, Eternal God state, Lin Fan was starting to discover just how ferocious the Firewater Empress was. While he was only a pseudo-Eternal God state being, his power levels were still rising steadily. Even if he met an utmost being, he would have the strength to fight back, unlike in the past, when he would have to fight with his entire life for a chance to win. Lin Fan looked up into the sky and cheered himself on secretly. Seemed like he had to work hard from now. Right now, other than the Heavens Will, the strongest enemy was the Firewater Empress. This B*TCH was extremely savage. If she were to be let out, his days of tragedy would have arrived. However, he wasn't the type of person to just sit there and wait for death. He had to fight back. This Firewater Empress wanted to toy with the body of yours truly. How could yours truly give her that chance? He had to do a farmer's revolution to turn the tides. How dare she call yours truly her exclusive property? Wasn't that just an insult to yours truly? If his powers were to increase by that much more, the moment the Firewater Empress came out, he would suppress her below him and give her one hell of a rough lesson to teach her what a man truly was. Now that Lin Fan had laid such a heavy determination in his heart, he would definitely work toward this goal. Have you obtained the Eternal God seat? The female Empress rushed over hurriedly. That breathtaking face of hers let out a hurried look as she was dying to know the answer. I did not obtain the Eternal God seat. The Eternal God seat was destroyed. Lin Fan replied. Initially, in Lin Fan's opinion, he was one hell of a heaven-revolting being. But, to think that he couldn't even obtain a single Eternal God seat. This was one hell of an embarrassment. However, the Firewater Empress did not obtain an Eternal God seat either. Yet, her strength could rule over all living beings. If even that B*TCH could have that strength, it was not as though yours truly with the system couldn't do it as well, right? I see. Indeed, that's the case. When the female Empress heard this, she nodded her head involuntarily. Back when she was leveling up to Divine Celestial Level 10, the Eternal God seat was right there above her head. However, there was nothing she could do, as she could only open her eyes wide and watch the Eternal God seat get further and further away from her. And this was the case for all the thousands of races in the ancient Scient world. By the looks of it, the female Empress garnered that there should be some grand scheme behind this. Or perhaps, the Eternal God seats were just controlled by the Heavens Will entirely. If the thousands of races could have an additional Eternal God state being who had the Eternal God seat, the ancient race would have long been destroyed. How else could they have held on till now? It was precisely because there was no additional Eternal God seat that the utmost beings of the ancient race could be this strong. How did you appear here? Back in the Xuanwang world, this B*TCH had set him up back and forth pretty badly. Therefore, Back then, Lin Fan swore that once he got to the upper world and found the female empress, he would definitely FCK her over back and forth as well. But now that he saw her, for a moment or so, Lin Fan could not put his hands to it. If he were to FCK her back and forth and FCK out her pregnancy by accident, he would have to bear responsibility, wouldn't he? The female empress noticed that the way Lin Fan was looking at her seemed a little off. She furrowed her brows, having a bad feeling about this. This is the hometown of Shuaner. The sovereign king of the ancient race came over to attack, and your empress had him killed, thus leading to the utmost being getting attracted here. The female empress replied. Oh, so that's the case. Lin Fan nodded his head. He then looked at a figure not too far in the distance and his lips curled into a smirk. Ah, Shuaner, why aren't you calling me now that you're seeing me? I thought you enjoyed calling me so dearly back then. Lin Fan said with a long implying tone, as he looked at that little brat who was lowering her head and standing there. He sniggered in his heart. Shuaner, you know this great god? That's right. All the little comrades around Shuaner asked in surprise. In their eyes, this great god was simply way too powerful. Not only did he kill an utmost being of the ancient race, when another utmost being had descended earlier on, he fled at the sight of this great god without daring to act brazenly at all. To all of these young people who had been living under the oppressive regime of the ancient race, this was something that was way too incredible. This guy was the absolute idol in their hearts right now. Shuaner walked over briskly while lifting that cute little face of hers, with big eyes that were brimming with tears. Big brother Lin, do you wish to hit Shuaner? Looking at the state Shuaner was in right now, Lin Fan truly did not know what to say for a moment or so. When this brat was young, she was all full of tricks and antics. But looking at her now, she seemed to have made quite a couple of new friends. What do you think? Lin Fan chuckled and reversed the question. The female empress stood there awkwardly. She knew that Lin Fan was referring to what happened 5 years ago. 5 years ago, in the eyes of the female empress, Lin Fan was just an ant that was hovering around the boundaries of death. Who would have thought that in the short span of 5 years, he would have grown to this state that was practically so dazzling that it blinded the eyes of the masses? This potential, these capabilities, this fortune. They were practically invincible. King Lin, let us head back to the village first. If there's anything else, we'll discuss it slowly. Nice and slowly, the female empress said. Big brother Lin, it's been many years since I've seen you. Shuaner has missed you. Back then, Shuaner did not want to agree to it. But, Shuaner secretly cast her glance at her master. Her meaning was clear. This had nothing to do with me. My master forced me. The female empress gave a clean cough. To think that this disciple of hers would betray her. This had her feeling a little saddened. Now that the beings of the fox race had barely escaped from the jaws of death, they were naturally extremely respectful towards Lin Fan. Towards the powerful beings, the beings of the fox race would always bear a heart of reverence. Back when Shuaner was brought away by the female empress, the beings of the fox race had already felt that they would have a strong backing from there on. But by the looks of it, this mother *C King Human King seemed to have a pretty close relationship with Shuaner as well. This was something that was exceptionally invigorating for the beings of the fox race. With such powerful beings around, the safety of the fox race had a guarantee from now on. The base of the fox race was underground. However, there was a mysterious formation that was sustaining it. No one else could tell that it was underground because when they lifted their heads, all they would see were the clear blue skies and white clouds. Within a house. Big brother Lin, don't be angry now. Shuaner has truly missed big brother Lin. Shuaner said with a sweet tongue. For some reason, this little brat had learned how to act coquettishly somehow. And her tongue has gotten sweeter as well. Back in the past, she would call him uncle. Now, she was calling him big brother. Seemed like yours truly must be growing younger by the day. This little brat, seems like you've gotten naughtier these days. All of your words are practically sugar-coated with honey and are getting sweeter. These are your friends here? Lin Fan asked while smiling. The moment Shuaner heard this, she smiled sweetly. Yes. These are all the friends that Shuaner has made while exploring outside. Senior. I am Zhang Dao from the Horn race. A little lad who was similar to Shuaner stammered out nervously. Senior. I am Tianyu from the Wings race. A little maiden who looked pretty decent spoke up. Those bright eyes of hers shone with awe. In the heart of this Tianyu, this great god before her was her idol. Thereafter, the other little comrades of Shuaner made their introductions. Lin Fan could tell that while some of these little comrades had pretty trash potentials, they had a heart bent on pitting against the ancient race with an unyielding will and a lack of fear. If they were cowards, they wouldn't have accompanied Shuner to this point after all. Chapter 849, He's about to explode. Chapter 849, He's about to explode. Senior, I've met some sort of a bottleneck recently with my cultivation. I feel like I've been veering off the right path. However, no matter how hard I try, I just can't see where I've gone wrong. Zhang Dao's face was bitter as he looked at Lin Fan hopefully, wishing that this senior could give him a pointer or two. Senior, I've been trying to cultivate this mystic art recently. However, I just couldn't get started on it. Could you help me to check and see just where the problem lies? Tianyu flapped her wings a little and asked. At this moment, Lin Fan was standing in the middle of a field and blinking his eyes blankly. He then looked at the grinning Shuner and realized what had happened. Bloody sh*t. Yours truly was scammed by this brat again. Lin Fan recalled about what had happened earlier. He had really thought that this brat was going to take him for some sightseeing. To think that it would be something like this. In his memory, Big Brother Lin, shall we go for a walk later on? I've prepared tons of good food. Also, there are a lot of beautiful places around Shuner's hometown. Toward this little request of Shuner, Lin Fan naturally wouldn't reject. After all, he had been killing around all these years. It was quite a good idea to just sit back and relax every once in a while. When Lin Fan first arrived at the place of the walk, he lamented for a moment. This was truly quite the scenery to behold. But, this feeling did not last for too long when he realized that something was off. The group of little comrades of Shuner came before Lin Fan. In the beginning, Lin Fan hadn't discovered anything wrong with this. But as time went by, these little comrades began to train and cultivate in his face. Some of them displayed their martial arts. But when they were halfway through the display, it was as though they had met with some difficulties and came to a stop. Some of them were trying to break through in front of Lin Fan. But they tried till their faces were completely flushed red, and were unable to break through even then. In Lin Fan's opinions, these little comrades of Shuner were acting a little weird, weren't they? Weren't they here for a walk? Why were they cultivating? But, seeing the diligence of the younger generation, Lin Fan naturally felt heartened as well. When he saw that someone was having some difficulties in displaying a particular martial art, Lin Fan could not help but speak up to give him a reminder. But, after Lin Fan was done pointing out to the first person, things began to turn a little messed up. Senior, what should I do about this? That's right, Senior, could you please show us the way? Please. All of a sudden, Lin Fan found himself surrounded by this bunch of little fellas. Looking at all of their hungry gazes, Lin Fan felt exasperated. It was not as though he could reject them now, could he? When Lin Fan cast his sight over at Shuner, he found her sniggering to herself at a lone corner. Evidently, this was all premeditated. This brat, Lin Fan glared at Shuner. Damn it, he should have known. How could she be so kind-hearted to invite him for a walk? Seemed like he was here to teach for free. Big Brother Lin, please. These little comrades of mine are really in awe of you. And, they don't have a teacher to guide them along either. They've been cultivating on their own all this while. Because of that, they must have suffered quite a bit along the way. As Shuner's most powerful and greatest ever idol, you'll definitely help Shuner, right? The relationship between Shuner and these little comrades had been winding at times as well. But, it was precisely because of that that the bonds between individuals would turn even stronger and tighter. These were also little comrades she could entrust her life to. In front of the sweet nothings of Shuner, how could Lin Fan respond to that? And even if he could, what could he respond with? The fact that she had already phrased it as such, if he didn't agree to it, it would definitely bring down his image. All right then. Eventually left with no other choice, Lin Fan nodded his head silently. This walk was now over as Lin Fan trod on the path of guidance. But, Lin Fan truly held some of these little fellas in high regards. Some of them were rather smart. Even without his own guidance, their achievements in the future wouldn't be all that bad either. And now that they had met with yours truly, who was the strongest in this entire world, their achievements would definitely be even higher in the future. The ancient race was the common enemy that required the thousands of races to fight together against it. Therefore, it wasn't a bad thing to train up a few more powerful beings. And, since these little fellas had quite a chummy relationship with Shuner, Lin Fan was naturally glad to assist. Given Lin Fan's exceptionally sharp senses, a single glance over was enough for him to check out their complete backgrounds. Therefore, when it came to guiding them, he could naturally tailor to their needs without any issues at all. What you're doing now isn't right. It should be like this. You'll be unable to break through this way because your foundation hasn't been built enough just yet. Just nice, I've got a couple of pills here. Pop them up. This is a yin-yang skill. As a girl, what are you doing trying to cultivate this? Do you want to turn into a tranny? Just nice, I've got a skill here. Go and learn this instead. It was needless to say that the mood of these little kids here was practically exploding right now. In their opinion, this must have been the good fortune that they had cultivated over several past lives for them to be able to receive guidance from such a great god. If others were to find out about this, wouldn't they die from sheer jealousy? Shuiner, we've really got to thank you this time around. If not for your help, how would we be able to receive the guidance of this senior? All of these little comrades who had just received guidance crowded around Shuiner and thanked her profusely. Through the guidance of senior, they had benefited immensely. It's nothing. We're all little comrades. And, Big Brother Lin is a really nice person. Shuiner looked up into the distance. Big Brother Lin, who was guiding her little comrades right now, had a sparkling glint in his eyes that seemed like stars right now. He was brimming with pride right now. Senior, what's wrong with me? I feel like the powers within my body are about to burst out of me. At this moment, a little fella who hadn't been able to break through for the longest time now was suddenly discovering that the true energy within his body were rumbling furiously. It was as though a gushing river was trying to push out of his body, scaring the little fella witless. November LBJNN. When Shuiner and the others caught sight of this, their hearts skipped a beat as they hurried forth. Big Brother Lin, what's wrong with him? When Lin Fan caught sight of this, he was equally startled. This wasn't right. Didn't this fella just pop a single pill? Why were these signs showing up? How could this be? Isn't it just an energy pill? Why would it cause him to reach the brink of explosion? Lin Fan looked left and right before yelling out, "I-O! Holy sh*T! I've mixed up and passed him the wrong pill. This is a triple energy pill. No wonder he couldn't hold it in. Ah, then what should we do? How could Shuiner and the others know what this pill was? However, the name alone was enough for them to guess that it must be powerful. It's alright, it's alright. Since that's the case, I'll just help him to raise his cultivation state then." Lin Fan replied casually. There were many pills on Lin Fan that were basically all stolen from others. It had been a long time since he had cultivated any pills on his own. The main reason was that none of the pills cultivated would be useful at all. And, even if he were to pop them himself, he wouldn't add in that many experience points. Therefore, wasn't it just one hell of a waste of them to cultivate them left and right then? As for this triple energy pill, it was a pill that Lin Fan required to stabilize his powers when he was entering the divine celestial cultivation state. The cultivation state of this little fella here was only that of a desolate celestial lower level. If he didn't have any guidance of a powerful being after consuming this pill, he might truly explode. Lin Fan used his finger to tap on the head of this little fella. A surge of energy gushed right into his body, suppressing the rampaging powers that were rampant in his body right now. And, what had Shuiner and the others startled was that this guy's cultivation state was literally skyrocketing in their faces. Desolate celestial middle level. Desolate celestial upper level. Desolate celestial full cultivation. This. At this moment, Shuiner and the others were absolutely dumbfounded. A straight jump of 3 levels. Wasn't that way too scary? Alright, it's settled now. Don't get nervous, it's nothing much. Lin Fan clapped his hands up and down, implying that it was nothing much. But for Shuiner and the others, this wasn't the case at all. This matter was way too explosive. This is way too bloody shocking. Chapter 850. There's nothing wrong with these words. Chapter 850. There's nothing wrong with these words. His cultivation state rose just like that. Why do I get the feeling that I'm dreaming? Shuiner's little comrades were long stunned. This was especially when they caught sight of how the cultivation state of that little comrade of theirs had soared like a rocket. They could no longer stay steady. Step by step, they had painstakingly, relentlessly, diligently, slowly, and tirelessly raised their cultivation states. The reason for that was because they did not want to accidentally veer off the right path and turn insane or something. But, look what happened now. That little comrade of theirs had literally soared just like that. And, it was a direct ascension into the heavens, without any hesitation at all. Even the little fella, whose cultivation state had increased, was equally astounded at this moment. I'm a desolate celestial full cultivation state being just like that. Huo Dong raised his head in bewilderment and looked at Lin Fan blankly. That's right. What's wrong? Are you feeling uncomfortable anywhere or anything? But, that shouldn't be right too. I gave you a thorough check just now. You seem perfectly well. Looking at the expression on this little fella's face, Lin Fan thought that something was wrong. Huo Dong's emotions right now were as though he had just taken a roller coaster ride and was unable to steady his nerves for a long time. His potential could be considered average. For him to get to this cultivation state, he had endured countless trials and tribulations. By the time he got to desolate celestial lower level cultivation state, he felt as though he had already used up all of his innate potential. Towards his path from that point forth, he no longer bore much hope. If he wanted to cultivate up to a desolate celestial full cultivation state, it would probably be impossible for him unless he met some encounter or something. But right now, in just a mere few seconds at most, his cultivation state had leapt all the way up to desolate celestial full cultivation state. If word of this were to get out, it would shock quite a number of people. Thud. At this moment, Huo Dong collapsed onto his knees before Lin Fan. With a look of reverence on his face, it was as most he would take Lin Fan as his only idol for the rest of his life from this point forth. My gratitude for your help, senior. My gratitude for your help, senior. In his entire lifetime, Huo Dong hadn't really bowed down to anyone. But at this moment, he was thoroughly convinced. This senior before him was not a human. This was a god. Within the ancient saint world, the raising of cultivation states was still something that one had to be extremely wary about. That was because it would result in the instability of one's cultivation route. But, even at this point, Huo Dong did not notice anything wrong with his body. It was as though every single cultivation state had been climbed up by him on his own, all the way to this full cultivation state. What are you doing? As a man, why are you kneeling? Hurry up and get up. I was the one who gave you the wrong pill earlier on. It's my problem, therefore, I was the one who had wronged you instead. The joy of cultivation is not about whose cultivation state is the highest. It's the sense of satisfaction one gets after enduring all the hardships. And without a single peep, I brought your cultivation state all the way up to desolate celestial full cultivation state, causing you to miss out on all the joy in the process. But, it was only lucky that there wasn't any greater price to be paid. Lin Fan lamented regrettably. No, please don't say that, senior. The kindness of senior will be something that this young one will remember in his heart deeply. Huo Dong replied emotionally at this moment. How could Huo Dong not be emotional right now? Even though desolate celestial full cultivation state wasn't an extremely high cultivation state, he could still be considered as a pretty decent powerful being. Even a legatus of the ancient race did not have a cultivation state of this level. Back when they met a legatus of the ancient race, they could only scram. But right now, Huo Dong could stand a chance against one. Highs. Thankfully, I had only mistakenly taken out a triple energy pill earlier on. If I had missed a little further off and taken out the Rainbow King pill instead, your cultivation state might have even bolted all the way up to a divine celestial level 4, undying state. By then, that would be a huge dip in the joys in your path of cultivation. But thankfully, I didn't pick that up. That is the silver lining in this mistake. Lin Fan said with some trepidation in his heart. This thing about cultivation was huge. The feeling of every single cultivation state was an experience on its own. If not for this experience, what was the meaning of even cultivating? Just like Lin Fan himself, who had climbed up every single step up through chopping down monsters. How wonderful was that feeling? When the little comrades of Shuiner heard those words, they were completely confounded. What did that mean? To think that jumping 3 cultivation states in a go wasn't enough, there was even a pill that could jump all the way to a divine celestial level 4, undying state. This. Convinced. Everyone was thoroughly convinced and speechless right now. When Huo Dong heard these words, he seemed a little disappointed. Why didn't senior make a mistake earlier on? If he did, Huo Dong would have been willing to be bumped up to a divine celestial level 4 state. But, when he thought about what he had just gained, Huo Dong felt that he had already benefited from it. If not for senior, God knew when he could have actually raised his own cultivation state to desolate celestial full cultivation on his own. Senior, that skill you gave me earlier on. A young brat spoke up. She had looked through that skill book earlier on. However, she felt that it was a little profound. Given her current cultivation state and experience, she could not make out what sort of mystifying effects that skill could produce. But in her opinion, any skill given by senior must be something extraordinary. Although, it would still be better for her to clarify things at this point. At least, she could have a sense of direction in her heart. Oh, that skill, let me think. Oh, right, I got that after killing the utmost being saint. It's a top-of-the-line skill only for females. Once you cultivate it to its peak and enter the Tao, the power that can be produced will be pretty decent. There aren't many issues with the cultivation process in the early stages as well. Lin Fan replied after recalling for a moment. These were skills that Lin Fan couldn't even be bothered with. He had wanted to throw them away initially. But, he thought about it and figured that there might be some uses for them in the future. By the looks of it, it was indeed serving some purpose right now. The moment the brat heard it, her entire face froze up. A skill that he had obtained after killing Utmost Being Saint. This was something way too terrifying for her. Any skill that was kept by the Utmost Being couldn't possibly be weak, right? This. Big Brother Lin, I heard that forcefully raising one's cultivation state would cause some sort of impact towards one's path in the future, wouldn't it? Shuiner knew that Lin Fan was extremely strong. But, she hadn't expected him to be this strong. Even though her master was the female empress, she didn't have the same formidable capabilities. Yes, there is indeed that issue. Lin Fan nodded his head, agreeing with Shuiner's opinion. Senior, it's fine, I'm already really satisfied, Huo Dong declared with a look of gratitude on his face. He thought that Senior here was feeling guilty over the fact that his cultivation route might be unstable due to this forceful raise of his cultivation state. But, to Huo Dong, if not for the fact that Senior had raised his cultivation state, it might be difficult for him to cultivate to this state even if it took him his lifetime. There's definitely no issue. The raising of one's cultivation state would definitely bring forth issues. But, for those who face issues, it's because they themselves are the ones who are lacking in their own physical strength. Don't worry about that. When I raised your strength, I had long stabilized your cultivation route along with it. There will definitely be no problems. Lin Fan replied calmly before looking at Shuiner. Who did you hear this from? Shuiner was stunned. For a moment, she was speechless. How could she possibly say that she had heard it from her master? She then acted dumb. Shuiner has forgotten. Far in the distance, the female empress bore a troubled look. She had heard the conversation. While she felt bad about it, she couldn't say anything about it. There was nothing wrong with those words. Yet, how did it sound like everything was wrong through Lin Fan's explanation? However, at least Shuiner had the thought to cover up for her master. Alright, all of you little fellas have been working hard. With that, I'll give you guys a round of blessings then. Lin Fan chuckled out. He then stretched open his fingers and encompassed everyone around. The female empress was perplexed, not knowing what Lin Fan was trying to do. But all of a sudden, she was flabbergasted. Everything before her seemed so surreal. Chapter 851. My Master Has a Heart of Glass. Chapter 851. My Master Has a Heart of Glass. Lin Fan raised the potential of Shuiner and those little comrades of hers. In reality, this trainer profession was extremely sick. Given enough time, Lin Fan could definitely groom a huge batch of powerful beings steadily. The moment he thought of this, Lin Fan slapped his head. Bloody hell, were the brains of yours truly caught in the middle of doors? Back when I used 100 years in a single thought, why didn't I think of raising the potential of everyone in Xuanwang world? Holy FCK, to think that I could even forget something as such. How am I to live with myself? At this moment, Lin Fan was regretting. However, one might as well forget it. Since he had missed it, what else could he say about it? Big Brother Lin, what's going on? Shuiner feels as though there's a door being opened up in my mind. Right now, Shuiner was no longer the little brat who knew nothing. Thanks to the female empress, she naturally had some sort of an understanding towards the path of cultivation by now. But even then, the current situation had Shuiner feeling stumped, because it was as though a door had opened up abruptly within her mind. With that, a mysterious aura flowed into her body. This was a mystifying feeling that was impossible to be described. The female empress floated over with a look of astonishment on her face. She could not believe what she was seeing right now. She had discovered that Shuiner's potential had been raised indefinitely. This was something that made no sense at all to the female empress. Raising another's innate potential with just one's strength without depending on any treasures of the world. This was something that was absolutely impossible. But even if it were impossible, the facts were laid bare right before her eyes. She had no choice but to believe in it. Hush, don't get hasty now. When Lin Fan saw the female empress approaching, he indicated for her to be silent. The female empress was taken aback as she shut up immediately. In her mind, it must be extremely difficult to raise someone's innate potential. If her disciple were to miss out on a miraculous encounter as such because of her, she would never be able to live with herself. Not long after, Lin Fan's hand motions came to a stop. You're raising their innate potentials. The female empress asked with an incredulous look on her face. Yes, a casual raise here and there would do them some good. Lin Fan chuckled out as though he had just done something extremely normal. Master, what's innate potential? Shuener was confused at this point as though she had yet to recover to her senses. But all of a sudden, when she sensed the changes going on in her body, that little face of hers was startled. My innate potential has grown. Mine too. I feel like my cultivation state's about to be raised. The barriers that I've once found difficult to cross are actually looking pretty easy right now. All the little comrades of Shuener were getting startled together, finding everything difficult to believe. Big brother Lin, Shuener looked at Lin Fan with an astounded look. Lin Fan smiled calmly while waving it off. You and your little comrades here all are pretty decent. Therefore, I've just casually raised your innate potential so that you guys can have a smooth sailing path in cultivation. And you call this casual? The female empress looked at Lin Fan in a perplexed way. Capabilities as such were practically enough to rattle the entire world. If the thousands of races were to catch wind of such an ability, wouldn't they just soar in the future? At this moment, the face of the female empress changed as a thought struck her. Noticing how the potential of her own disciple was even higher than hers right now, the female empress could not help but feel a little envious. In order to raise her innate potential, the female empress had thought of up all sorts of ideas. She had popped endless elixirs and pills as well. Therefore, her innate potential naturally had seen some changes. But, looking at how Lin Fan could raise the innate potential of her disciple to this extent with just a casual wave of his hand, she could not help but harbor some thoughts. If her own innate potential were to be increased, how nice would that be? That would mean quite the jump in her own capabilities as well. This, even though the female empress was dying for it in her heart, how was she supposed to say this out loud? The female empress had an ego as well. How could she initiate the conversation to request for the other party to raise her cultivation state? At this moment, the female empress cast her sights towards her disciple. If her disciple were to speak up for her, there might be a chance at this. Shuener was undoubtedly the little heart warmer of the female empress. A single expression and a single motion was all it took for Shuener to understand her intent. Big brother Lin, Shuener tugged at Lin Fan's arm and said in a coquettish manner. Looking at how close Shuener was with Senior, all her little comrades could not help but feel envious. They knew that Senior was really easygoing. However, in front of him, they still watched their manners and would not act as Shuener would. Why, you little brat, what are you up to again? Lin Fan asked, chuckling. Big brother Lin, could you help my master raise her innate potential too? Shuener asked secretly. Oh, Lin Fan raised his brows and looked over at the female empress. As though she was embarrassed, the female empress turned her head away, acting like she had just remembered something. Shuener, you can't be rude now. Your master's innate potential doesn't require any raising at all. This was called putting out a long line to catch the big fish. The female empress felt that it was better to act more reserved right now. If she were to act like she was asking for a raise in potential the moment her disciple brought up this topic, that would be too shameful. But master, you've gathered so many materials and cultivated so many pills all for the sake of raising your innate potential. Even then, it has all been useless. Now that big brother Lin can raise one's innate potential, how great would that be for you? Shuener pressed the issue further. Cough. Shuener, your master has no need for it. The female empress replied. She was waiting for that one sentence. All would be fine as long as Lin Fan said, we'll give it a raise then. November LBJNN. The female empress would then agree to it as though she was put in a spot. That would put her out as someone who wasn't all that thirsty for it. At the same time, the other party would be the one who asked for it. Lin Fan looked at this act between master and disciple, then sniggered out in his heart at that moment. Even if this mother CKER wanted to act in front of yours truly, she had to make it somewhat more realistic. Oh, Shuener, since your master says that she doesn't need it, then let's forget about it. We don't want your master to be unhappy now, do we? Now, raising one's innate potential is no small affair. It's huge. The reason why I raised your innate potentials was because you guys are young and driven. As for your master, she's not really all that young now, and is practically at the end of her path. Therefore, there's no point whether we raise her potential or not. Lin Fan explained. This was him exacting revenge on her for everything that had happened in the Xuanwang world. Both the female empress and Shuener were completely stunned at this moment. The female empress could feel a burning sensation on her face. Those eyes on that ravishing face of hers opened wide as she turned around to leave, as though she had just been dealt with some immense pain. What did he mean by, not all that young now? Was your mother really that old? Master, Shuiner shouted after her, don't come over. Your master has something to do. You just have a good time with your friend there. The voice of the female empress was a little different now, as though she had just received tons of grievances. Aya, big brother Lin, how could you say it like that? My master has a heart of glass, and is really easily hurt. Shuiner stamped her feet in a huff. Huh, Lin Fan was startled. Heart of glass, it couldn't be, right? Big brother Lin, let me tell you this in secret. Shuiner cupped Lin Fan's ears and whispered softly, my master has a really fragile heart. Even though my master may put on a strong front on the outside, she is extremely sensitive in her heart, and will often shed tears alone. Gosh, and a little brat like you even knows what's sensitive. Lin Fan chuckled out. Of course, I know what it is. Shuiner pursed her lips while saying. Then, shall your big brother Lin head over to console your master for a little bit? Lin Fan continued asking while chuckling. Needless to say, big brother Lin, this was all caused by you, you know. Shuiner replied. That makes sense. Chapter 852, Someone is making a tribute. Chapter 852, Someone is making a tribute. A beautiful lone figure stood on a fresh patch of grass near the riverside. Lin Fan's words had a huge impact on her. To think that he would say that she was not all that young, and that this was the most she would amount to. This was something that the female empress had difficulty in accepting. Cough cough. Lin Fan coughed gently as he walked over from the distance. Ah, female empress, it was actually just a misunderstanding earlier on. Actually. King Lin, you don't have to say anything. I understand it myself. If there's nothing else, I would like to have a moment of silence alone. The female empress replied coldly. However, there were subtle hints brought by her tone that one would make out as long as they weren't a retard. Right now, the female empress was angry and unhappy. However, this couldn't be helped. Even though the strength of the female empress was tantamount to the heavens, she was a girl at the end of the day, and would naturally love the compliments of others, unlike what Lin Fan had just done by insulting her the moment he spoke out. How was the female empress supposed to feel about this? Furthermore, this was in front of her disciple. She had no way of placing her dignity any longer. When Lin Fan looked at that figure, he shook his head helplessly. He was only bearing some grudges over what happened in the past. Since he had already made his choice to not FCK her over back and forth, he had to at least get something off his chest through his mouth. But, who would have thought that this female empress cultivated her strength and not her heart, and would still have such a fragile heart? A moment of silence alone isn't comparable to a moment of silence between two people. Regardless of whether the female empress consented to it, Lin Fan walked over and stood beside her. He then inhaled deeply. Wow! The air here is really fresh. Once the ancient race is overthrown, the world can finally have peace return to it, and the beings of the thousands of races will finally be free to roam the lands without living such fearful lives any longer. The female empress looked at Lin Fan. Aren't you quite the shameless man? Shameless, I'd say. Female empress, aren't you a little too venomous with your words? Lin Fan rebutted. I am venomous. The moment the female empress heard this, her face blew up immediately. That's right. Back in the Xuanwang world, that strand of consciousness of yours was indeed extremely venomous to destroy my sect. What do you say? Lin Fan asked. As though he had remembered something all of a sudden, he continued, oh, right. I've been meaning to ask a question. Why did you fight so hard for that god blood back then? It's been too long. Forgotten. Since you feel that the scenery here is good, you can enjoy it all by yourself. The female empress did not want to say too much as she turned around to leave. She would have never expected that the ant in her eyes back then, that fella who was barely hanging on to his life, would have grown to this extent. Even she herself wasn't a match for him anymore. Forget it. Since it's over, let it be over then. But, it's just a pity about those lovely days back then. Lin Fan lamented. In the blink of an eye, a couple of years had passed. While things might have remained constant, people had changed. Your innate potential isn't something that pills can help to grow any further. You have already consumed all the pills that can help you with your innate potential. Unless there is some heavenly miracle that happens, there is practically no other way your innate potential can change anymore. Lin Fan said. I know that. The female empress nodded her head. It was just as Lin Fan had said, she was unable to raise her innate potential any longer. Or perhaps, it was more accurate to say that this was her limit. If she wanted to raise her innate potential once more, she would have to depend on some miraculous encounter. But, how could that encounter come by this easily? Alright, let me give you a raise in your innate potential. Who knows when the infinite worlds will open up? Therefore, it'd be good to raise your strength in the meantime. Lin Fan raised his hand and hovered it over the head of the female empress. What are you doing? The female empress shirked back and looked at Lin Fan in shock. Raising your innate potential, Lin Fan replied in bewilderment. If I wish to raise one's innate potential, I would have to touch their heads. Why, is there any issue? The female empress looked at Lin Fan. That frosty face of hers let out a troubled look. She was the female empress, an existence that was revered by the masses. But, to think that she would have her head touched by someone right now. But, the female empress wanted to raise her innate potential at the same time. Eventually, she nodded her head in agreement. Lin Fan chuckled out while placing his palm on the head of the female empress. This feeling was pretty decent, similar to guiding a young child along. Fondle it a little, so obedient, have you not started? The female empress was feeling a little uneasy about getting touched now. It was probably a long time ago when she was last touched on the head by someone else. Back then, the female empress wasn't the female empress yet, and was just a little girl who wanted the love and adoration of her parents. I'm starting now, don't speak, Lin Fan said with an indifferent expression. However, he was overwhelmed with joy in his heart. The both of them stood there with Lin Fan's palm fondling the head of the female empress. He tapped her head lightly with his fingers as though he was pampering a child he loved. The female empress lowered her head. Within the depths of those snow-white cheeks of hers, one could tell of some slight blushing. She sent out her consciousness and ascertained that there was no one else in the vicinity, then heaved out a sigh of relief. If she were to be seen like this by anyone else, where would she be able to hide her face? Is it not done yet? The female empress was feeling a little weird right now. There was a sensation she could not describe. Soon, Lin Fan chuckled out. Feeling that it was about time, he then had no choice but to kickstart his trainer module. Shing, the potential of the female empress hadn't been expended entirely just yet. At this moment, the face of the female empress changed. She could sense the changes that were running through her body. Within her inner world, there seemed to be a locked door that was now being slammed at with an immense pressure. Boom, the door shone with an unparalleled brilliance as a mysterious power spread out from beyond it. It was opening. To think that it would be opening up now. The face of the female empress changed. This was her final door. But no matter how hard she tried and how many methods she used, this door still remained unyielding regardless. But, to think that it would show signs of loosening at this moment. This was an indescribable joy for her. Boom, and just as the female empress was overwhelmed with joy, the door opened up entirely. The mysterious energy that had accumulated for a long time now finally gushed out and cruised through her entire body. A series of luminescent lights shone through the head of the female empress and lit up the entire world. My innate potential has really been raised. The female empress exclaimed out in exhilaration. That breathtaking face of hers was shining with an endless radiance as well. It's nothing too difficult. Lin Fan retracted his hands and placed them behind his back while saying out with a calm face. N-O-V-E-L-P-I-N-C-O-M. Sensing the changes in her body, the female empress turned around to Lin Fan. Thank you. Hooey. Lin Fan chuckled out. Small matter. While this was truly a small matter to Lin Fan, this was quite a significant deal for the female empress. And just as Lin Fan was ready to say something once more, his face changed as his expression started turning grim. What's wrong? Noticing how Lin Fan was looking slightly off, she could not help but feel nervous, thinking that something big had happened. At this moment, the ancient saint's sacrificial altar that was floating within his inner world was vibrating violently. Someone was offering a tribute. Within the ancient saint's sacrificial altar, there were a series of sacrificial chants that were revolving around it. I shall sacrifice my body to bring forth protection for the Cloud sect. The power of sacrifice was extremely strong right now. It was a powerful being who was sacrificing himself. And, it must be an unusually strong enemy for them to be able to push this powerful being to this extent. Lin Fan delved into the sacrificial altar and caught sight of a distant land through it. The Grand Master of the Cloud sect was burning up everything of him right now. Using his body, he was going to exchange it for the future of the Cloud sect. I've got something on. I'll be leaving first. Lin Fan did not say anything more to the female empress. Right after he said those words, he left the place and headed straight for the Cloud sect. Chapter 853, A Single Sword Slice. Chapter 853, A Single Sword Slice. That once peaceful and beautiful Cloud sect was no longer the same right now. In its place, the structures were derelict and the skies were almost stained red. In the ancient saint world, the Cloud sect could be considered as a major sect. There were a myriad of disciples under them from all the different races. November LBJNN. Even the Grand Master had had the strength of the formidable divine celestial level 8 state. Not only that, he had even broken through the barrier recently and had leveled to divine celestial level 9, 8 desolates United State. All the elders under them were godly as well, with an immense strength not to be looked down upon. But, even if that were the case, the sect was still faced with the calamity of destruction today. A relentless assault for 3 days and 3 nights had left those previously sturdy barriers of the Cloud sect to be breached entirely. Within the void, the disciples of the Cloud sect were glaring at a cluster of black figures far in the distance with an infuriated look on their faces. Grand Master Yun, you guys have been hiding in this pocket dimension with its fortified barriers that cannot be broken through. But, under the might of the colossal Shark's God Arc, any defenses shall be taken down. A gigantic battle arc that spanned several 100,000 miles in length shone with a godly glow. In order to push a godly arc that was this huge, it would require at least 30 divine celestial level 8 state powerful beings to expend their fullest powers so that it could sustain its motion. And at this moment on the God Arc, there was a humanoid living being with a shark head that stood there imposingly with an unparalleled might. This was one of the top 10 old ancient beast races, the colossal shark race. To think that the colossal shark race would defect over to the ancient race. Grand Master Yun glared at the void coldly and scolded out. A wise man recognizes his circumstances. The fortune of the Cloud sect has dispersed. For the Cloud sect to dare to pit itself against the ancient race, there was only death awaiting them. With orders from the ancient race, the Cloud sect shall be uprooted entirely. Sha Jingwang, he was one of the 12 godly beings of the colossal shark race. His strength was monstrous, and his powers torrential. With the orders of the ancient race this time around, he had come forth to take down the Cloud sect entirely. All of you B***stards. Are you guys really going to betray the sect? Meng Hengtian glared at some people on the gigantic arc with an enraged look. He hadn't expected that there would be some elders from the sect who would betray them, resulting in the Cloud sect's location being revealed. At the same time, this allowed the colossal shark race to rapidly break through the defenses of the sect's barriers. This pocket dimension was opened up by the founder ancestor, and should provide enough protection for them to resist the attacks of the ancient race. But, under this utmost treasure God Arc of the colossal shark race, it was broken through without putting up any resistance at all. All of the traitorous elders changed their expressions before replying casually. Meng Hengtian, siding with the ancient race is the only choice. If you were to surrender and conform to the ancient race, perhaps we might be able to spare your lives. Otherwise, death is the only path that awaits you. Bullshit, even if your father were to die, there's no way I'm going to collude with you spineless and conniving scums. Meng Hengtian hollered out. When some of the disciples of the Cloud sect caught sight of the situation, their hearts skipped a beat as they could not help but feel a tingling of fear. Within the void, that imposingly looking colossal shark race was giving them immense pressure. As one of the top 10 old ancient beast races, their strength was nothing to be scoffed at. It was definitely not something they could deal with. HMPH. Just at this moment, a roar burst forth. Sha Jingwang wielded a sea god staff in his hands and struck the ground with it furiously. Instantly, the world trembled as a gigantic wave surged up and enveloped the entire world in it. Hengtian, take the disciples and return first. Grand Master Yun knew that there was no other way to fight this anymore. In the past, the Cloud sect had only managed to survive by relying on this pocket dimension that was cleaved out by the founder ancestor in the past. But, now that the barriers had been broken, there was no way to defend against the attacks of the colossal shark race at all. Grand Master Yun knew that the infinite worlds must be on the brink of opening right now. Otherwise, the ancient race wouldn't be in such a rush to clean up all the sects and races. Grand Master, what about you? Meng Hengtian asked worriedly. I'll be fine, hurry and take the disciples back into the sect immediately. Grand Master Yun said. Han Yun. After hesitating for a moment, Meng Hengtian shouted out. Elder. Fairy Han Yun floated over with a grim look on her face. She could see that the situation was dire for the Cloud sect this time around. Take the disciples and retreat back into the sect. Leave everything here to the Grand Master and me. Meng Hengtian ordered. Yes, Fairy Han Yun replied without thinking twice. Given the urgency of the situation, there was naturally no need for her to overthink things. Grand Master, I know what you're thinking. However, this will require the both of us to join hands. Meng Hengtian naturally knew what the Grand Master was thinking about. However, this wasn't an affair for the Grand Master to shoulder alone. This was something that concerned the entire Cloud sect. They had to retain seeds of hope for the Cloud sect. How could the Cloud sect perish here just like this? As long as they could allow the entire Cloud sect to leave this place safely, even if they had to sacrifice themselves, it would be all worth it. HMPH. You want to save the younger generation? Dream on. This time around, we shall have the Cloud sect annihilated from the ancient saint world entirely. What are you guys still waiting for? Seal the place. Sha Jingwang shouted out. What? Instantly, the faces of Grandmaster Yun and the others changed. Since God knew when, some of the other elders of the sect had already entirely betrayed them and sealed up the entrance to the sect completely, not letting even a single disciple through. A bright flash of light burst forth. Some of the disciples who were about to enter the sect were immediately minced into dust. Wang Tianlong, Jan Huoli, what are you guys doing? Meng Hengtian's eyes were practically popping out with fiery blazes burning out of them. He could not believe everything that had just happened. Your king here has said it. Wise men know their circumstances. These two elders have already submitted over to the ancient race. Sha Jingwang continued. All of the remaining disciples could only retreat back continuously before returning to the side of Grandmaster Yun. For these disciples, everything that had happened right now had already left their hearts completely frozen in fear. Grandmaster, what should we do now? Fairy Hong Yun had not expected that there would be elders in the sect who would betray them and cut off their exit path. These disciples had nowhere left to run now. The positions of these two elders weren't all that low in the sect as well and were pretty formidable. While they might not be comparable to Grandmaster Yun, they were divine celestial level 7 state beings as well. Now that there were these two elders blocking at the entrance, there was basically no disciple who could pass through at all. Ha ha ha, suddenly at this moment, Grandmaster Yun laughed out shrilly, to think that at this critical moment, the ones who would bring the Cloud sect to its doom would be the elders that the Cloud sect has painstakingly raised. The ancient race has ruled over the entire ancient saint world. Everything is because of our own doings. Forget it, even if I have to die today, I'll ensure that there are still seeds of hope for the Cloud sect. Tribute, Grandmaster Yun bellowed out as his aura skyrocketed up. At this very moment, Grandmaster Yun had no other choice but to sacrifice himself for the sake of preserving these seeds of hope. The powers of Sha Jingwang weren't something that he could go up against. Grandmaster, no, everyone from the Cloud sect screamed out instantly. They hadn't expected that their Grandmaster would sacrifice himself. I'll sacrifice everything in exchange for the safe departure of the Cloud sect. Boom, a light beam caged up Grandmaster Yun and pierced right through the heavens. The face of Sha Jingwang tensed up. He hadn't expected that Grandmaster Yun would sacrifice himself. Hengtian, I shall leave the Cloud sect in your hands. Grandmaster Yun said. Grandmaster, Meng Hengtian held out. However, he knew that he had no way of stopping the Grandmaster at this moment. This was probably the one way to retain some seeds of hope for the Cloud sect right now. All of a sudden, the power of sacrifice vanished entirely as Grandmaster Yun looked at everything in disbelief. How could this be? Ha ha ha. When Sha Jingwang caught sight of this, he burst out laughing. If the sacrifice had taken place, he might truly not have been able to withstand it. But, now that the sacrificial process had been cut midway as though it was severed, Sha Jingwang could not help but burst out in laughter. Seems like even the heavens have abandoned you guys from the Cloud sect. This is truly doomsday for the Cloud sect. Suppress them. Sha Jingwang waved out with his hands as all the living beings of the colossal shark race on the God Ark roared out. These imposingly ferocious colossal shark race beings opened their menacing mouths and attacked the Cloud sect members. As for the cannon on the colossal shark God Ark, it was gathering a beam of light that then bolted out into the void with a loud bang. When the disciples foe the Cloud sect caught sight of that light beam, they could only stand there in a daze. The power of the light beam wasn't something they could possibly defend against. And just at the moment when the disciples of the Cloud sect thought that death had arrived, a sharp sword flash burst down from the sky and stood tall before their faces. This sword flash was incredibly immense as it slashed out ferociously. Instantly, the light beam was sliced cleanly into two. Chapter 854. A single palm to destroy the enemies. Chapter 854. A single palm to destroy the enemies. What? When Sha Jingwang caught sight of that cannon shot from the colossal shark God Ark being sliced apart by a single sword flash, he leapt up in shock, not knowing what had just happened. But, this wasn't the most startling thing awaiting Sha Jingwang. Within the void, a single tear that was ripped open. This tear was incomparably pitch black, and a gigantic hand descended down from within. Tugging furiously, the hand grabbed all the colossal shark race beings in the void and gave a squeeze. Instantly, the sky was filled with blood spraying out everywhere as their remains were rained down onto the ground. "Who? Who's there?" Sha Jingwang howled out. He hadn't expected that something as such would happen at this critical moment. When all of these disciples of the Cloud sect, who were already prepared for death, saw everything before their eyes, they were completely confounded. This was way too strong, wasn't it? At the same time, a question popped into their minds. Who could it be? Gosh, you've really got some guts there to want to destroy the sect of my friend, E.H. A set of white robes fluttered in the wind as a figure with hands behind his back walked out briskly. That calm expression showed that he wasn't fazed by anything before him in the least bit. Lin Fan. When Grandmaster Yun caught sight of that figure, he could not help but gasp out in disbelief. It's been a long time, Grandmaster Yun. However, if not for your sacrifice, I might not even have known that the Cloud sect had met with something as such. Lin Fan said. But indeed, that was the case. Even if Lin Fan's powers were godly right now, if Grandmaster Yun hadn't initiated the sacrifice, he wouldn't have been able to sense it. Seemed like this ancient saint's sacrificial altar wasn't entirely useless after all. Perhaps he could tell those people he was familiar with to hurry and sacrifice if they ever met with any problems. Maybe he could still make it in time with that. Within the ranks of the Cloud sect, there were some people who did not know of Lin Fan and who in the world he was. But, as for Fairy Hongyun and the others, they couldn't be any more familiar with him. Who is this powerful being? That's right, he was the one who had saved us earlier on. Also, he seems extremely friendly with our Grandmaster. Does this mean that we're safe now? You guys ought to know him. He's the Mother Fasterisk Sea King Human King. What? He's the Mother Fasterisk Sea King Human King? That Mother Fasterisk Sea King Human King who is able to stand up against the utmost beings of the ancient race. That guy's my idol. To think that I would be able to see the Mother Fasterisk Sea King Human King in my lifetime. At this moment, every single person within the Cloud sect started cheering out. While others might not know about it, they were thoroughly familiar with the Mother Fasterisk Sea King Human King. That was because a long time ago, there was a live broadcast that was embedded in their memories. That was the only hero who could stand up against the utmost beings of the ancient race. Who are you? Sha Jingwang looked at Lin Fan warily. At the same time, his heart was burning with rage. With just a single move, this fella had killed countless of his underlings. Lin Fan turned his head around and looked at that vast, gigantic ark. He then chuckled out while asking, one of the top 10 old ancient beast races, the colossal shark race. I wonder when you guys defected over to the side of the ancient race. HMPH. The colossal shark race has always been the most loyal followers of the ancient race. Sha Jingwang retorted. Since you guys are the loyal dogs of the ancient race, then you have no rights to know who yours truly is. Just go to hell then, will ya? Towards ants like these, Lin Fan basically did not have that much of an interest. He then lifted his palm gently. Under the single slap of that palm, the world began to explode out all of a sudden. From the void, that gigantic palm crushed down in the direction of the colossal shark god ark. Brazen, Sha Jingwang bellowed out. As he gave the sea god staff in his hands a hard knock, the void broke out into waves. Layers after layers, the waves crashed against that palm strike. Anyone who has the guts to kill colossal shark race beings only has death awaiting them. Sha Jingwang hollered. Those torrential waves surged furiously before turning into a gigantic shark. This shark was akin to a heaven shark with two fins on its back as it opened up that humongous bloodied mouth. Bam! In the blink of an eye, Lin Fan caught this heaven shark in his palms. With a gentle squeeze, it exploded out. Impossible. That's impossible. Sha Jingwang was taken aback, showing a face of incredulity. It was as though he could not believe that this guy could take down a heaven shark with just a single palm. But, things were never that simple. After crushing that heaven shark, the palm continued to crush down toward Sha Jingwang. A tremendous aura erupted forth, causing the blood in the face of Sha Jingwang to drain out. As he lifted that sea god staff high, an immense amount of power gushed forth in retaliation. One after another, heaven sharks burst forth menacingly. However, under the might of the palm strike, they were but ants that were destroyed one after another. Open up the protective barrier. Caught at a loss, Sha Jingwang yelled out in a panic. Instantly, the colossal shark god ark lit up with a bright flash of light as a natural barrier covered it completely. Accursed be asterisk starred, Sha Jingwang screamed, but all of a sudden, he heard a crack. Lifting his head, Sha Jingwang discovered that under the might of that palm, the barrier was actually cracking apart without any resistance at all. How could this be? This is the protection of the sea god. Sha Jingwang howled out in astonishment. But, the entire barrier shattered in the blink of an eye, and the colossal shark god Ark was instantly in the control of the palms of the other party. Ding! Discovered lower graded utmost treasure, colossal shark god Ark. Looking at the imposing outlook of the gigantic Ark, Lin Fan had thought that it would be some wild treasure. To think that at the end of the day, it would just be a lower graded utmost treasure. Boring. Way too boring. Creak. Using a slight bit of strength, Lin Fan caused the colossal shark god Ark to crack as its core powers began to burst forth. When Sha Jingwang saw how the colossal shark god Ark was broken under the might of a single palm, he was scared entirely witless. This was a lower graded utmost treasure. Even a divine celestial level 10 state being wouldn't be able to damage it. But, to think that it would be destroyed by the other party with such ease. This was something that just shocked the bejabbers out of Sha Jingwang. Don't kill me, please spare life, please let me live. Ding, congratulations on killing divine celestial level 9 state powerful being, Sha Jingwang. Ding, congratulations on obtaining lower graded utmost treasure, Sea God Staff. ... With just a single move, the entire world returned to its former peace. Piok, Piok, Lin Fan clapped his hands cleanly and looked at the Sea God Staff in his hands. He then tossed it straight into his paradise for the big ancient demon. It was good to eat stuff like this every now and then as tonic. It's over just like that. At this moment, everyone stood there dumbfounded. That formidable Sha Jingwang was dead just like that. And, that imposing army from the colossal shark race was annihilated entirely like that. The disciples of the Cloud sect were not the only ones stunned right now. Grand Master Yun was entirely frozen as well. He felt that everything made no sense at all. Everything was just bloody too surreal. When Lin Fan looked at the petrified masses, he chuckled out, "What's wrong? Are there any issues?" Grand Master Yun gulped down his saliva and asked in a tone of disbelief, "Lad, you. Just how strong are you right now?" Grand Master Yun could recall that back when this lad had left the sect those years ago, he wasn't this strong just yet, right? But now that he had appeared once more, this lad was practically too blinding to look at. Strong. Just way too strong. He should be a divine celestial level 10 state powerful being by now, right? But, that single palm strike from earlier on was something that even a divine celestial level 10 state being might not be able to defend against. Oh, just pretty average. Lin Fan replied casually. When Grand Master Yun heard these words, he nearly spat out a mouthful of old blood. Chapter 855, Colossal Shark Race. Chapter 855, Colossal Shark Race. The two elders who had been sealing up the entrance of the Cloud sect were totally dumbfounded by now. They hadn't expected that things would turn out as such. To think that Sha Jingwang would be slammed to death with a single palm just like that. Bloody mother CKER. How did things come to this? In their opinion, the Cloud sect was definitely doomed to fall this time around. But, who would have thought that this guy would appear? And they knew about this fella as well. He was the human who was once invited to the Cloud sect as a guest. But, to think that he would turn this strong upon his reappearance. Thud, Grand Master, spare our lives. We must have been blinded at that moment. Please spare our lives. The two elders begged fervently, hoping that the Grand Master could spare their lives. Had they known that things would come to this, they would have never dared to side with the ancient race even if it cost them their lives. But right now, it was all too late for those words. Grand Master Yun, this is an affair of the Cloud sect. I'll leave it to you. Lin Fan hated people who sided with the ancient race the most. At this moment, Grand Master Yun was extremely infuriated as well. Slapping out with two palm strikes, he crippled the elders instantly. HMPH. Betraying the sect is something that even death will not compensate enough. But, on account of your contributions as elders of the sect, I shall strip you guys of your cultivation states and have you locked up in jail for all eternity. Grand Master Yun said. No, the two elders suddenly realized that they were crippled right now as they howled out tragically. What was the difference between killing them and turning them into crippled handicaps? Grand Master Yun, what do you intend to do from here on? Lin Fan allowed his consciousness to slip into the pocket dimension. He discovered that the aura of the founder ancestor of the Cloud sect was no longer present. Seemed like he must have dissipated entirely. Highs. Now that the barrier of the sect has been broken, it can be considered as useless. Seems like we can only seek out a new place. Grand Master Yun replied. Lin Fan pondered for a moment before speaking up, how about coming to the Xuanwang world? I've already integrated with that place. There should be no need to worry about the ancient race. Alright, Grandmaster Yun did not think twice. Lin Fan spread out his fingers and brought all the structures of the cloud sect within the Xuanwang world. Now that the Xuanwang world had been cultivated by Lin Fan, safety was definitely not an issue for the masses to cultivate there. November LBJNN. At the same time, Grandmaster Yun was a righteous and just man. After he entered the Xuanwang world, he would be able to converse well with the Grandmaster of Glory sect. After arranging everything, Lin Fan noticed a pair of eyes that had been following him intently. When Lin Fan turned around, he realized that it was Fairy Hongyun. Still doing okay? Fairy Hongyun walked up and inquired softly. Yes, not bad. Lin Fan nodded his head. Later on, just head over to the Xuanwang world first. Once we chase away the ancient race, there will be much more free time by then. Lin Fan's words could be taken either way. He did not know if Fairy Hongyun would be able to catch his drift. Understood. Fairy Hongyun nodded her head and did not say anything more. This was quite the cold conversation to have for this reunion after a long time. Lin Fan, what are you preparing to do now? Grandmaster Yun asked. Since this colossal shark race chose to side with the ancient race, I'll go over to their base and check it out properly. Lin Fan was in urgent need of Shenyang pills right now. Since this colossal shark race chose to jump out by itself, there was no way Lin Fan could let this off just like this, right? As one of the top 10 old ancient beast races, there should definitely be no lack of treasures they had. But, you've got to be careful. The shark god of the colossal shark race is extremely formidable, and there are many old-timers in their midst. If the situation doesn't seem right, it'd be best to run off. Grandmaster Yun warned. Yes, rest assured. Lin Fan then swept his robes and had everyone from top to toe of the cloud sect kept into the Xuanwang world. Lin Fan was only accumulating strength right now. The only way for him to have more confidence in fighting against the ancient race was through increasing his strength and forces. PSHEW. Darting into the void, Lin Fan headed for the base of the colossal shark race. A palace stood tall within a vast ocean. There was a ruler seated on his royal throne and playing around with a precious pearl in his hand. All of a sudden, the pearl shattered into dust that scattered down on the ground. All the surrounding beings of the colossal shark race lowered their heads. Under this repressing aura that was emanating forth, none of them dared to utter a single word. Beast-starred thing, the god of the colossal shark race that sat on the throne finally spoke up. His eyes were glowing with a glint of frosty fury. God, the tributes are here. At this moment, a member of the colossal shark race walked in from outside. Following him, a cage was carried in by several other members of the colossal shark race. There were 4 kids that were locked up in the cages. These kids had smooth and tender skin, looking full of spirit. When they caught sight of everything before them, the 4 little began to bawl out loudly. The shark god inhaled deeply, sucking in the 4 children into his mouth, then started chewing down. All of these pieces of meat contained the purest spirit chi. It was only at this moment that the shark god's anger was slightly appeased. Not bad. The shark god stretched a finger into his mouth and pulled out a bone from one of the corpses of the children, using it to pick at his teeth before biting this bone into dust again. These bunch of trashes could even fail something such as destroying the cloud sect. They are seriously a disgrace to our colossal shark race. The shark god said. Everyone below trembled in fright and did not dare to reply. This was because they knew that the shark god was still infuriated. No one dared to bump heads with him at this moment. After a long time, Lin Fan arrived at the water region where the colossal shark race should reside based on the old records. Indeed, they are one of the top 10 old ancient beast races. To think that they would occupy an ocean that is tens of millions of miles wide in radius. With such a huge territory, there must be abundant resources and wealth. Lin Fan checked out this patch of limitless ocean region. All of a sudden, he caught sight of a black shadow up ahead. He then flew towards the black shadow. Above the water surface, a wooden barrel was floating on the surface of the water. Within the barrel, a young boy checked out his surroundings warily while waving a wooden bat in his hands. The wooden barrel was extremely tiny, such that even a single wave could flip it over. It was undoubtedly a fool's dream to expect that this thing could cross this entire ocean. And not only that, under the circumstances of having no food, how long could this guy sustain himself? I'll never give up. I have to get outside and learn some capabilities so that I can rescue my race members. The eyes of the young boy were shining with a glint of resolution. Broop, broop, broop. All of a sudden, there was a huge disturbance on the surface of the ocean. The young boy yelped out in astonishment. Right before his very eyes, there was a gigantic sea beast that was opening its huge mouth. The cruel eyes of the beast were glaring straight at that young boy who was in the wooden barrel. It then lunged over greedily, wanting to eat him up in a single mouthful. Ah, save me! The young boy screamed out in fear before shutting his eyes tightly, not daring to watch everything before him. After a long time, when the young boy realized that he was still fine and alive, he finally opened his eyes slowly. All he saw was that gigantic sea beast floating on the surface of the ocean after being cut into two. The blood stained the entire ocean, attracting many predators. "Kid, what are you doing?" The moment the young boy heard this voice, his heart skipped a beat, feeling a little afraid. But when he caught sight of that figure, he heaved out a sigh of relief. Nevertheless, he still whispered out in a hushed tone, "What sort of a person are you?" Lin Fan looked at the kid and chuckled out asking, "What do you think?" "A good person?" the boy asked. "Yes, I'm a good person then." "Now, why are you here all alone?" Lin Fan asked. I. After hearing everything the kid said, Lin Fan could not help but feel impressed with the courage of the boy. To think that he would dare to set sail with this setup. If not for the fact that he had bumped into Lin Fan, he would have long turned into the food of the sea beast. But by the looks of things, Lin Fan garnered that he must have arrived at the correct location as well. Chapter 856. The Race with No One Cultivating at All. Chapter 856. The Race with No One Cultivating at All. And by now, Lin Fan knew the name of this young boy as well. Little Stone. This was some really casual name that he was given. And with just that strength of yours, you want to cross this vast ocean that spans out tens of millions of miles. I'm afraid that's not going to be too possible in your entire lifetime. Lin Fan's words did not have anything untrue at all. For a little kid like this, the ocean was truly boundless, and stretched as far as his eyes could see. If he wanted to cross it just by floating across slowly like this, he might not be able to achieve it even if he was given 100 years. Even for any living being below the divine celestial cultivation state, if they wanted to fly across this entire ocean, they would have to spend at least an entire year. I'm not afraid. My race members are living in the shadows of these demons. I will head out there to find a powerful being to acknowledge as my master. I will then learn some capabilities to come back and save my entire race. Even though Little Stone wasn't huge in size, his eyes shone with an iron will. You've got ambition, little fella. But, if you hadn't bumped into me, you would have long been eaten up by that sea beast. Lin Fan chuckled out. Being well-read, Lin Fan had an understanding towards all the beings of the thousands of races. There was plenty of spirit chi within the body of this boy that was pure without any impurities. While he might not have any cultivation state, Lin Fan could tell that his entire body was filled with spirit chi, even down to his flesh. With this type of body, there was no doubt that he was from the spirit race. And, this race was a little mysterious now. It was hard to find them in other places. Are you strong? Little Stone peered at Lin Fan with a thirsty look in his eyes, as though he was anticipating something. Not too bad. Why, is there any issue? Lin Fan chuckled out. Thud. Instantly, Little Stone collapsed to his knees and prostrated that small little body of his on the ground. Please take me in as your disciple, senior. Teach me some mystic skills of the martial arts. I want to learn them to save my race. Haha. Lin Fan could not help but chuckle out when he looked at this small little stone that was prostrating before his face. This was quite an interesting kid. Oh, sure, I can teach you some unparalleled mystic skills. But, what can you give me in return, kid? Lin Fan laughed out. There's no free lunch in this world out of no reason, you know. When Little Stone heard these words, his face got a little anxious, not knowing what he should do. All of a sudden, Little Stone took out a dagger and placed it right in front of him. Please take me in as your disciple, senior. Little Stone is someone from the spirit race. I know that all of those devils love eating the meat of my comrades. As long as you teach me some mystic skills, Little Stone is willing to cut off his meat for senior to eat. Even though Little Stone was young, his face was extremely solemn as though he was talking about something extremely important right now. Lin Fan's face tensed up. To think that this Little Stone would say something as such. But, Lin Fan knew that it was inscribed in the records that the spirit race beings were born with an incredible amount of spirit chi within their bodies. This could be considered as the most delicious thing in this entire world. The colossal shark race must have rounded up the spirit race beings and reared them so that they could enjoy this endless delicacy at their own likings. At this moment, Chicky stood on Lin Fan's shoulders, his chicken eyes shining with a bright glint. Old bro, this kid is pretty decent. He has the style of your Chicky here. Chicky commented. You've taken a liking to him. How about you take him as your disciple? Lin Fan grinned. Sure, even though this kid isn't anything much, your Chicky here is a benevolent chicken. Regarding this matter, Chicky had wanted to brag a little more. But just at this moment, Little Stone suddenly shook his head furiously. No. I only want to take Senior here as my master. I don't want to take a chicken as a master. The moment Chicky heard these words, he exploded immediately. Spreading out his wings, all his chicken feathers stood upright. Kid, you really don't know what's good for you. Your Chicky daddy here has extended such a goodwill gesture and yet this is going to anger your Chicky. Ha ha ha, Lin Fan burst out laughing before patting Chicky on the head. Kid, we'll talk about this matter in the future. First, let's go check out the area of your spirit race first, shall we? Lin Fan tossed his robes. Bringing Little Stone with him, he flew into the distance. It didn't take long for Lin Fan to reach the place, as he barely had to blink. But for Little Stone, this was a little unbelievable. He had drifted out for close to 10 days now. Yet, in the blink of an eye, he was already back home. At this moment, Little Stone was even more certain that this person before him was an absolute powerful being. Little Stone, is this your home? Lin Fan looked up into the distance where a city floated above the ocean's surface and asked curiously. This city was filled with spirit chi, all of it being emanated out from the beings of the spirit race. Over an endless amount of time, it had become so thick that it had formed spirit chi cyclones. These spirit chi cyclones swiveled above the sky of the city and formed different types of spirit creatures that lingered on and on. Senior, this is the hometown of Little Stone. Now that he was back home, Little Stone could not help but let out a look of reminiscence. But his face was mostly filled with fear, as though there was something horrifying that existed here. That's strange. This is the first time I've seen a city which is filled with only normal people. Lin Fan sent his consciousness through, and every single movement and action that took place within this city was instantly taken into his mind. The innate gift of these beings from the spirit race was that they had bodies that were extremely pure and without any impurities within them. If they were to cultivate, it would definitely be a smooth sailing for them. However, the curious thing was that within these beings of the spirit race, there wasn't even a single cultivator. All of them were normal people who were extremely weak. In the ancient saint world, this was something that he thought to be entirely impossible. Little Stone, is there anyone who cultivates in your hometown? Lin Fan asked. No, Senior, none of Little Stone's family members are allowed to cultivate. If they did, they would be killed by those devils instantly. That's the reason why Little Stone wants to leave this place and look for a powerful being outside to acknowledge as my master, so that I can learn something. Little Stone replied. Lin Fan did not say anything. He was just silently sensing all the movements within the city. Before long, he knew exactly what was going on. Within this city, there were 10 million spirit race beings. However, not only did none of them have a cultivation state, they didn't even have any true energy. Seemed like the colossal shark race had really just encircled this entire place and kept these spirit race beings as captives while letting them live on their own within. Those who worked could only earn some meager livelihood to feed their families. This had Lin Fan recalling the society back in his old world. Those who would dare to cultivate on their own were akin to the ones carrying firearms back in his old world. If they were to be discovered, it would be a severe crime. On the streets, the colossal shark race beings formed patrol groups that roamed the place. Whenever the surrounding beings of the spirit race saw these colossal shark beings, they would lose all of their guts. How dare you bloody sh*t of the spirit race dare to cultivate? At this moment, a patrolling colossal shark race being arrested a spirit race being and bared his rows of sharp teeth. No, I didn't cultivate. The spirit race being who was arrested yelped out in horror. HMPH. Cultivating on your own leaves you only with death. Time to devour you. The being of the colossal shark race instantly opened his mouth at the spirit race being. For the colossal shark race beings, the flesh of the spirit race beings was an absolute tonic. That meat which was full of spirit chi would turn into pure spirit chi the moment they ate it up, nourishing their bodies. When the surrounding spirit race beings caught sight of this, they cowered in fear at a corner badly, not daring to say anything more. To all of them, these beings from the colossal shark race were simply way too intimidating. Spare me please. When the being of the spirit race saw how he was about to turn into fish food for the colossal shark race being, he begged out for mercy with a tragic look on his face. Looking at everything, Lin Fan could only shake his head. These colossal shark race beings were truly lapdogs of the ancient race. To think that they would even pick up on the same habits of eating up others. He then pointed out with a single finger. Bam! Instantly, that colossal shark race being exploded out and was minced into sludge, deader than he could have ever been dead. Chapter 857, Time to Eat Shark Fin. Chapter 857, Time to Eat Shark Fin. Who's there? Just who is it? At this moment, all of the patrol members of the colossal shark race started getting nervous. To think that a living being would dare to kill the colossal shark race members. Were they tired of living? As for those horrified living beings of the spirit race, their faces were completely frozen solid at the scene before them. This was the colossal shark race, one of the top 10 old ancient beast races. This was an existence that stood shoulder to shoulder with the ancient race and ruled over the tens of millions of miles of ocean region. They were a force not to be reckoned with in the ancient saint world. Spare us! Please spare us! The beings of the spirit race suddenly prostrated down onto the ground. In their opinions, the colossal shark race beings would definitely shift the rage over to them and kill them later on. The colossal shark race is indeed extremely tyrannical. To think that you're able to hold an entire race captive. At this moment, an authoritative voice descended down from the void as two figures could be seen standing out. Little Stone was beyond excited right now as he waved down to everyone below, "Everyone, I'm back. I'm back." Little Stone was young and ignorant, without much knowledge towards powerful beings out there. But, when he saw how Lin Fan had annihilated a colossal shark race being with just a single finger, he was naturally overwhelmed with joy. Chicky stood on Lin Fan's shoulders and looked down at the spirit race beings below. He could not help but shake his head, feeling that these guys were leading way too miserable a life, being reared like pigs. The spirit race beings who were prostrating on the ground looked up at that voice from that short little figure and looked at one another. Little Stone, isn't that the son of Zhao Xinming? Hadn't he set out for the seas? I had thought that he would have died in the jaws of some sea beast or something. To think that he would have returned. Who's that man beside Little Stone? Was he the one who killed that colossal shark race being just now? Who are you to dare killing the colossal shark race beings? The patrolling squad from the colossal shark race roared out. Something as such had never ever happened before. To think that a living being would dare to kill someone of their race right in their territory. HMPH. Lin Fan snorted out coldly using the Heavenly Dragon's music, and a sound wave boomed out ferociously, as that immense amount of power caused the void to rupture out immediately. Creak. The void cracked out inch by inch. For all of these colossal shark race beings of the patrol squad, this power was simply way too formidable to resist at all. Bam. Crushed. Completely, utterly crushed. These beings of the colossal shark race patrol squad were turned into a sludge of blood and dust. Tragic. This was truly really tragic. Everyone, I've brought Senior here back with me. Senior will be able to help us get rid of these devils. Little Stone commented excitedly. Little Stone, why are you back? And who is this person? Little Stone, your younger sister was just taken away by the colossal shark race to give to the shark god as tribute. The moment Little Stone heard this, his entire face changed. Senior, please save my younger sister. My younger sister has been brought away by those devils. Hearing these words from the masses, Little Stone started tugging at Lin Fan's robes worriedly. Who is it? At this moment, a violent roar boomed out from the distance. This voice was coarse, mighty, and filled with an endless ferocity. Far from the distant skies, a surging wave gushed over. Above that wave was a colossal shark wearing a golden armor and bringing forth an unparalleled might, along with an extraordinary disposition. Ah, the Shark King is here. The moment the spirit race beings heard this voice, they felt their hearts skip a beat as they were filled with fear once more. For these spirit race beings, the Shark King was akin to a god who held control over their lives. As for this powerful being that was brought back by Little Stone, they did not have any confidence in him at all. In their eyes, the Shark King was an invincible existence. Back in the past, there were some other spirit race beings who had grouped up to come and rescue them. However, in the hands of the Shark King, they were like ants that were killed in a split second. They could not fight back at all. Lin Fan's brows furrowed as he looked over into the distance. His lips then curled into a grin as he patted Little Stone's head. Don't worry. Everything is under control. Who are you? A long streak of golden light burst forth and stopped before Lin Fan's face instantly. The body of the Shark King was extremely huge, and that menacing shark head of his was especially nefarious looking. Those cruel eyes of his were glaring at Lin Fan with extreme violence. Get your shark god out. Towards an ant of this level, Lin Fan didn't have much of an interest. HMPH. The shark god is extremely revered. He isn't someone that a lowly living being such as yourself will be able to meet. You have just killed my underlings earlier on. Today, I shall have you pay with your life. The Shark King bellowed. Shing! In a flash, the Shark King transformed into a streak of light and attacked at Lin Fan. All of the surrounding beings of the spirit race supposed that this powerful being brought by Little Stone was just going to fall right here. November LBJNN. Perhaps even Little Stone himself might die here. Creak. But all of a sudden, something that shocked everyone happened. That Shark King that was invincible in their eyes was gripped by the throat by that living being. Just have that shark god of yours come out to face me. In the eyes of yours truly, all of you aren't even worth a single ant. Lin Fan raised his hands with extreme ease and choked the Shark King in his grip. That look of disdain in his eyes caused the Shark King to be riled up entirely. The Shark King hadn't expected that things would turn out as such. He barked out, just WHO in the world are you? Mother *C King Human King. Lin Fan replied casually as he increased his grip strength. On the other hand, Chicky was sitting on Lin Fan's shoulders carefreely right now. With a look of scorn, he looked at the Shark King and said, HMPH. Just someone like you and you think you can get your grubby hands on my old bro. Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the reflection to see just how FC King ugly you are? Old bro, I've suddenly recalled something. Chicky's eyes shone with a bright glint as he remarked excitedly. What? I heard from my mother that the royalty of the colossal shark race are all heaven sharks. Their fins are extremely great tonics that can help to raise one's cultivation state. Chicky said. Oh, shark fins. Lin Fan grinned. ****. The Shark King howled out. To think that this living being before him right now would be thinking about eating him. Slice. All of a sudden, the Shark King roared out as his body began to expand rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he became 1,000 feet tall, as a colossal shark with a pair of fins appeared before Lin Fan's very eyes. Those pair of heaven fins were glistening and shiny. Old bro, that's it, he's a heaven shark, the royalty amongst the colossal shark race. Chicky flapped his wings excitedly while saying as he drooled over it. Since these colossal sharks love eating the spirit race beings so much, this time around, we'll have them treat the spirit race beings to a meal then. Lin Fan raised his hand furiously and tossed the heaven shark into the air. Using 2 fingers as a sword, he drew a line in the air. 2 streaks of sword gleams glided through the air. With a sharp sound, that pair of gigantic heaven fins were sliced off. Arg-hhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhhh. The Shark King howled out in pain. However, in a single breath, Lin Fan slammed down violently and crushed the Shark King. Ding! Congratulations on killing royalty of the colossal shark race, Shark King. Experience points plus. ... Given Lin Fan's strength now, even if this were a heaven shark, he wouldn't give him many experience points anymore. Therefore, it was practically negligible. At this moment, all of the spirit race members were stunned, as though they had just witnessed something horrifying. They hadn't expected that the formidable Shark King would die just like that. On the other hand, Little Stone was clapping excitedly. He was so enthusiastic in clapping that his hands were reddened by now. Chapter 858, Why Leave? Chapter 858, Why Leave? The Shark King is dead. From amidst the spirit race beings, someone suddenly yelled with excitement as though this was something unbelievable. It didn't take long before the rest of the spirit race beings caught onto it. The Shark King is dead. To think that the invincible Shark King would be killed. He was killed by the powerful being brought back by Little Stone. Everyone, hurry and come over. The Shark King is dead. The cheers erupted out into the sky. All spirit race beings felt as though a feeling of indignance had finally been vented out of their hearts. Senior, you're really way too strong. Little Stone raised his head and looked at Lin Fan in exhilaration. Lin Fan chuckled out and did not put this affair to heart. Thud. All of a sudden, all the spirit race beings collapsed to their knees prostrating, please save us, Senior. Please save us from everything, Senior. The spirit race had been oppressed by the colossal shark race for a long time. Now that hope had finally appeared, they naturally wanted to grab hold of it. And they had to kneel down and beg all the more for it since the hope had appeared right before their very faces. Lin Fan raised his hand gently, rest assured, everyone. After today, the colossal shark race shall be a thing of the past. Chicky, you stay here and gather some helpers to prepare for a heaven fin feast. Lin Fan said. November LBJNN. Don't worry, old bro. Your Chicky is the best guy for such things. Chicky replied cheerily. At this moment, Lin Fan flew up into the void. You guys don't have to be nervous. Yours truly will head over to kill the shark god now and return to host the heaven fin feast. Instantly, Lin Fan dove into the void and disappeared into the direction of the shark god up ahead. As for Chicky, he was now the center of all attention. Chicky could not help but raise his head with a face of pride. All of you can just calm your nerves. It'll only take a short time for my old bro to go kill that shark god or whatnot. Any cooks around here, come forth and prepare these heaven fins here. It wasn't long before a large group of cooks from the spirit race stepped forth. When they saw the pair of heaven fins, they were completely petrified. Holy sh*t. This is truly the first time I'm preparing such a large ingredient. That's right, how should we do this? Chicky hopped onto the heaven fins and waved his wings. Alright, come listen to my instructions. ... At this moment above a patch of ocean, Lin Fan's white robes fluttered gently with his hands behind his back as he looked down at the situation below. On his way here, he caught sight of the colossal sharks who had taken Little Stone's younger sister and cleaned them up conveniently. He then had Little Stone's younger sister head back on her own. Shark god, come on out. Lin Fan looked at the calm water surface and said out softly. Boom. The moment Lin Fan said these words, the water surface surged with mounting waves. Who was the one who killed the Shark King? All of a sudden, the entire ocean region turned pitch black as an enormous cluster of colossal sharks floated up, filling the entire place. Who are you? At this very moment, a golden-colored colossal shark stood solidly on the surface of the water. Those shark eyes of his shone with an ominous glint. For the shark god, there had truly never been anyone who had dared to come here and act so audaciously. Even in the past when there were those beings of the spirit race who had dared come forth to try kill him, they were all killed by the 12 kings under him easily. But all of a sudden, the shark god realized that one of his 12 kings, the Shark King, had died. For the shark god, this was something absolutely intolerable. Mother *C King Human King. Lin Fan placed his hands behind his back with a haughty aura. It's you. When the shark god heard this title, his face took a stark change. It was evident that he knew Lin Fan. Were you the one who destroyed the colossal shark god arc of your god here as well? The shark god asked sternly. Hue, why ask when you know the truth? Lin Fan chuckled out, then sized up the shark god. Not bad. Compared to the Shark King, you're much larger in size. Those pair of heaven fins you have there, they can be considered as yours truly's. Brazen. At this moment, the remaining 10 kings who stood at the side of the shark god barked out. But in the next moment, Lin Fan stretched out his fingers and instantly grabbed the 10 shark kings in his palms. How dare you? When the shark god caught sight of this, his entire face changed. But for Lin Fan, was there anything he wouldn't dare do? In a flash, the 10 shark kings returned to their true forms. But the moment their true forms appeared, Lin Fan severed their heaven fins straight away before pinching them to death one after another, turning them into sludge. That thick blood stained the water surface, scaring the colossal sharks so badly that they retreated furiously, as though they had just seen a ghost. Not bad. These 10 pairs of heaven fins should be enough for the spirit race to enjoy. Lin Fan checked them out properly, then tossed the 10 pairs of heaven fins up into the void and sent them flying toward the city. This single scene had the shark god feeling like his guts had just been smashed. This was a downright provocation. The colossal shark race were known to dominate over the water regions. But, to think that there would be this guy here who would dare come knocking on the door and taunting as such. This was an utter humiliation, one that was absolutely unbearable. The billions of colossal sharks roared out as that ferocious might of theirs was transmitted into the air. Shark god, the moment you decided to side with the ancient race, your death had already been set in stone. Lin Fan said calmly. At the same time, he had some lingering intents on the treasures of the colossal shark race. This time around with his trip to the colossal shark race base, yours truly would have to pillage a good round out of them. Damn it, kill him, the shark god bellowed out as he waved out his hands, sending billions of colossal sharks pouncing on Lin Fan. At that moment when Lin Fan looked down and caught sight of those pitch-black figures down below, he grinned out. Mother *C King Human King, so what if you're immensely strong? The might of a billion colossal sharks isn't something that you can afford to defend against. The shark god yelled. Fellow brother, let us assist you. Just as Lin Fan was prepared to make his move, the void suddenly rippled out as hundreds of figures burst forth from the void. Lin Fan was startled as he looked over. This single glance had him realizing that all of these figures seemed to be from the spirit race. Shark god, how dare you hold our fellow spirit race beings captive and slay them indiscriminately? Today, I'm going to fight it out with you. A man wielded 2 swords in his hands and stood beside Lin Fan as he shouted out in fury. Haha, So, it was you guys. But it's alright. All of you can die together from the fury of a billion colossal sharks today. My colossal shark race is an invincible existence. The shark god roared out. As he took a massive step forward, a tremendous amount of power burst forth from him. A series of ripples spread out on the water surface, causing the entire ocean to start billowing outwards. Fellow brother, who are you? On behalf of the spirit race, I thank you. However, the situation is pressing right now. This colossal shark race is extremely formidable. We have to retreat now first before we plan for our next course of action carefully. The man wielding dual swords looked over at Lin Fan saying. When he caught sight of the black cluster of figures down below, his face could not help but turn grim as well. Senior brother, we had better hurry up and leave. This is the savage shark formation of the colossal shark race. If we're caught up in it, death is the only thing that awaits us. A female from the spirit race said. All right, fellow brother, let us hurry and leave. They were beings of the spirit race. When they found out that there was a big group of their fellow race members who were being held captive and reared by the colossal shark race, they were filled with an endless rage down from the bottom of their hearts. Therefore, they gathered a huge group this time around to try and save them. Initially, they had remained hidden in the void for days now to check out the situation carefully. But, to think that there would be a man who would come forth and head straight for the shark god. This was something that was way too incredible for these spirit race beings. But, seeing how the other party was stepping up for their spirit race, how could they leave him in the lurch to die? Therefore, they did not mind revealing themselves. Lin Fan blinked his eyes and shrugged his head helplessly. There's no need to. Why are we leaving? It's just a bunch of ants. Chapter 859, Nothing to talk about then. Chapter 859, Nothing to talk about then. Lin Fan stepped forth and pushed Ling Wuwei aside. There was no need for such fuss to be created for these ants that he could crush with just the flip of a palm. However, there was something that amazed Lin Fan. To think that the spirit race would have quite a number of powerful beings among them. But on second thought, this should indeed be the case. Some of these spirit race beings had ascended from their lower worlds and were rescued by the different sects out there. It was only later on that they discovered that they had fellow race members who were being held captive and reared by the colossal shark race. Naturally, there was no way they could endure something as such. All of these spirit race beings in this city here were the remnants of several generations. All of their cultivation records had been destroyed entirely a long time ago. As for any spirit race beings that had any cultivation, they were most likely slaughtered by the colossal shark race as well. Ling Wuwei was startled, not expecting that the other party would act as such. Senior brother, hurry up and leave. This infinite shark formation truly is nothing to be scoffed at, and isn't something we can defend against. It's not our fault if this living being is looking to die. We've tried our best. Daylight slash. As the billion colossal shark army approached closer, the faces of the spirit race beings grew grimmer as well. Ling Wuwei held the dual swords in his hands and slashed out, bursting forth with an infinite amount of sword flashes. These sword flashes filled up the entire void, extremely sharp in their auras. Clang, clang, this infinite shark formation is formidable indeed. To think that even my daylight slash wouldn't be able to penetrate through it. Ling Wuwei's face tensed up as his heart could not help but freeze as well. Fellow brother, please hurry up and leave. The colossal shark race is extraordinary, and is definitely not something that one can handle alone. Ling Wuwei pressed on. Ha ha ha. At this moment, Lin Fan burst out laughing. He then looked over at Ling Wuwei. He truly hadn't expected that someone like this would still be alive. Even in such dire straits, he still had the mood to persuade someone else to leave with him. Do you know who I am? Lin Fan swept his robes and his lips curled into a grin. Ling Wuwei was taken aback, not knowing what the other party meant by this. The several hundred spirit race beings had a worried look on their faces as well. Senior brother, it's going to be too late. Hurry and go. Lin Fan raised his head gently. You guys are not bad. To think that you would have the guts to come out even under such circumstances. If the thousands of races were all like you guys, there wouldn't be a need to worry about the ancient race. Ling Wuwei had suddenly realized that the aura of the other party was getting more mysterious by the moment. This was an extremely horrifying feeling. As far as Ling Wuwei was concerned, he had never ever felt such a feeling before, even if he were to meet with his Grand Master. Yours truly is the mother ** Sea King Human King. I'm not sure if you guys have heard of me. But, whether you have or not, it doesn't matter. That's because today, you shall know of this name. Suppress. In front of everyone, Lin Fan sent out a casual palm strike that turned extremely frightening at this very moment. Creak. The entire void shattered as an invisible palm strike pushed down and 5 transparent fingers descended from the sky. They created so much pressure that the entire void was starting to rip apart. That palm strike was boundless, and as wide as the entire heavens itself. An astral wind burst forth from it. How could this be? At this moment, everyone was completely stumped, as though they had just seen a ghost. That's because this palm strike was simply way too horrifying. All the spirit race beings who had been urging Ling Wuwei to leave earlier on had now shut up entirely. Their eyeballs were practically popping out of their sockets right now. Boom, the palm strike slammed down. As though they were made of paper, that billion colossal shark army started wailing out tragically. I, the mother *CKING human king, have trodden over the ancient times. To think that a mere colossal shark race would dare to defect and turn over to the ancient race. Die under a single palm. Boom, all of a sudden, the entire world turned bright once more. That initially pitch-black sea of colossal shark army had disintegrated into dust and scattered around the world. How could this? At this moment, the shark god was absolutely dumbstruck by everything before him, as though he had just seen a ghost in broad daylight. That was a billion-strong colossal shark army. That was the infinite colossal shark formation formed by them, possessing a frightening might. But, to think that it would be taken down by the other party in a moment. Lin Fan retracted his palm and placed his hands behind his back before turning to Ling Wuwei. Take a look. What do you think? Lin Fan asked calmly, evidently unbothered. Strong. Way too strong. Ling Wuwei felt like even breathing was getting difficult to handle right now. Everything was way too unbelievable in his eyes. It was so fake that he was almost going to cry out. To think that the colossal shark army would be taken down by the other party with such ease. They didn't even have a single chance to fight back. This. At this moment, Ling Wuwei wasn't the only stunned one. The hundreds of spirit race beings were equally flabbergasted. That junior sister who had been urging Ling Wuwei to leave earlier on practically had her lips sewed together right now. Those sparkly eyes of hers were almost popping out. When Lin Fan looked at the astounded expression on the face of Ling Wuwei, he was filled with an immense pride. That's only natural. Yours truly is indeed really strong. As for ants as such, why would there be a need to be concerned about them? Lin Fan chuckled out casually. The art of *TTING was always so refreshing. Senior, no, mother *C king human king, this junior here. Ling Wuwei was finally snapping back to his senses and hurried to introduce himself. At this moment, Ling Wuwei's entire face was flushed red. To think that he was trying to persuade senior here into leaving earlier on, thinking that this senior's strength was only the same as theirs. November LBJNN. But, who would have thought that the strength of this senior here would be this strong? It was so strong that they were almost pissing their pants. Lin Fan waved it off with his hands, indicating for them to be quiet. You guys just stand on one side and watch it out. Let yours truly handle this affair. At this moment, Lin Fan looked over at the shark god and smiled out. Shark god, what else have you got? Come and use it all then. Aye. The shark god looked at Lin Fan and felt his heart tighten. He was filled with fear. But in a flash, that face of his was replaced with a menacing expression. You be **SH**T. How dare you kill my colossal shark race? You foul degenerate, shut up. At this moment, the surface of the ocean rumbled once more as an elderly figure of the colossal shark race appeared from the depths of the ocean. Mother **C king human king. The aura of this elderly of the colossal shark race was heavy and stern. He wasn't any casual being. Shark ancestor. When the shark god caught sight of who it was, he greeted him hurriedly. His eyes were filled with a look of fear. Oh, here comes an old thing. And what are you up to here now? Lin Fan asked. Brazen. When the shark god heard Lin Fan addressing the old master as some old thing, he was instantly incensed. Shut up. The shark ancestor barked out once more before turning around to look at Lin Fan. Mother **C king human king, this old one here is the old master of the colossal shark race. Could you please extend some mercy and spare the colossal shark race? While the shark ancestor's voice was calm, the aura that he emanated out was nothing to be underestimated. This was especially the case for Ling Wuwei and the others. When they were faced with this aura, they felt as though a gigantic mountain was pushing down against their chest, causing them to have difficulty in breathing entirely. Shark ancestor, am I right? Lin Fan's brows furrowed as he chuckled out. That's this old one here. The shark ancestor was neither overbearing nor servile, holding a polite tone. You wish for yours truly to spare the colossal shark race. However, what can you give in exchange for the lives of your colossal shark race beings? Lin Fan asked in an insinuating tone. The shark ancestor was taken aback for a moment. He then replied, as long as the mother * Sea King Human King would raise it, our colossal shark race would try our best to fulfill it. Alright then, get me 100 trillion Shenyang pills. Lin Fan chuckled out. Ah, the shark ancestor was startled. He then hurriedly replied, Mother * Sea King Human King. 100 trillion Shenyang pills is too astronomical an amount. Our colossal shark race doesn't have that. Oh, you don't have it, I see, nothing to talk about then. Lin Fan's brows were raised, evidently at the limits of his patience now. Chapter 860, I'll take it myself then. Chapter 860, I'll take it myself then of LBJNN. The face of the shark ancestor changed. Behind that peaceful expression of his was hidden an infuriated heart. He hadn't expected that as one of the top 10 old ancient beast races, they would be forced to this extent by someone one day. No matter what, he was a divine celestial level 10, eternal God state powerful being. However, he knew that this mother * Sea King Human King before him wasn't someone he could deal with. While the mighty name of the mother * Sea King Human King hadn't been spread through the entire ancient saint world just yet, the shark ancestor knew that the mother * Sea King Human King was the one who had killed the utmost beings of the ancient race. Hold on, please, mother * Sea King Human King, 100 trillion Shenyang pills is really way too astronomical a sum. Throughout the entire world, there shouldn't be a single race that has a fortune of this level. The shark ancestor added hurriedly. He was truly afraid that the other party might just strike out over a single word of disagreement. By then, it would truly be a tragedy for them. Right now, Lin Fan was in urgent need of Shenyang pills. Since this colossal shark race was willing to come hand them to him willingly, why shouldn't he accept it? As for those few hundred beings of the spirit race, they were truly startled by this scene before them right now. To think that the formidably mighty colossal shark race would actually bow down in the face of a single human. Their hearts were skipping furiously, especially when the shark ancestor made his appearance. They had truly not known that there was still such a monstrous existence that existed within the colossal shark race. If this old monster wanted to kill them, he could probably do so with the flip of his hand, without much effort. Yet, in the face of this human, the shark ancestor had to remain humble and accede to his requests, without daring to show even a bit of resistance. In their eyes, they could finally see hope for the spirit race. How much do you guys have then? Lin Fan asked. The shark ancestor looked at Lin Fan, 13 trillion. What, are you trying to chase a beggar away or something? 13 trillion. As one of the top 10 old ancient beast races, the colossal shark race only has a family fortune as such. This isn't even 10% of the colossal dragon race. The moment Lin Fan heard this, he exploded. How in the bloody world could they be this poor? For them to only have such an amount of Shenyang pills is one of the largest races. If word of this were to get out, wouldn't they just be a laughing stock? The shark god glared at Lin Fan with an ominous glint and an endless fury burning in his heart. A ball of fire was practically blowing out of his eyes. To think that this damned fellow would not only kill his fellow race beings, but try to extort this much from them. This was a crime that should have him dead. But, he hadn't expected for this matter to alert the old master out. The old master had been cultivating in seclusion without bothering about secular affairs for the entire time. That was because he knew that the infinite worlds was going to open up. There could only be hope for the colossal shark race to tide it through that calamity if the old master raised his cultivation and protected them. And, this was the exact reason why they had sided with the ancient race. When the heavens will of the ancient saint world were to awaken, the infinite worlds would fall without any chance of coming back at all. Mother * Sea King Human King, you can't compare our race with the colossal dragon race. The colossal dragon race is the richest out of all the top 10 old ancient beast races. And, these 13 trillion Shenyang pills are already the savings that our colossal shark race has accumulated over 10,000 years. The shark ancestor replied hurriedly. The colossal shark race had no penchant for riches. Therefore, these Shenyang pills were accumulated slowly over time. Within this ocean region, while the colossal shark race reigned over a huge area of territory, there weren't many resources for them to grab at. Especially not when they had to give up offerings to the ancient race as well. This was the entire savings of the colossal shark race, these 13 trillion Shenyang pills. Oh, so that's the case. But, it's a pity 13 trillion Shenyang pills are really way too little. It's not enough for you guys to buy back the lives of your colossal shark race. Lin Fan smirked out calmly. Shark ancestor, this human is really too much now. Since when has our colossal shark race ever feared any other races? Mother ** Sea King Human King. Don't you get cocky now. The shark god bellowed out as he lined his palms with his scale armor. As he raised them, the entire surface of the ocean started billowing out. A series of waterspouts rose up from the calm surface of the waters. Degenerate, what are you doing? When the shark ancestor caught sight of how the shark god would dare to take action, his face changed. HMPH, shark ancestor, I am the god of the colossal sharks. For this human to dare to try testing the authority of the colossal shark race, the only thing that awaits him is death. The shark god hollered out and opened up his paradise. All of these waterspouts gushed up into the heavens and brought with them a formidable power and unparalleled force. Courting death, Lin Fan slapped down with a massive palm. While the shark god's powers were that of a divine celestial level 10, eternal god state as well, he was far too weak in Lin Fan's eyes. With the pummeling of that gigantic palm, all of the waterspouts burst apart as the shark god was practically controlled in these hands immediately. The shark god bellowed out, damn human. I am someone of the ancient race. How dare you treat me as such? You will definitely die a horrible death. A gigantic heaven shark streaked through the void. Those gigantic heaven fins flapped non-stop. But all of a sudden, a bright sword flash streaked through, slaying through the world. Shing! Blood splattered out everywhere as a pair of heaven fins floated in the void. Sweeping his robes, Lin Fan sent the heaven fins flying toward the city. Mother ** Sea King Human King. Please show mercy. I have 20 trillion. When the shark ancestor caught sight of this, his entire mental state was rattled as he hurriedly pleaded out. HMPH. First, it was 13. Now, it's 20. Do you really take yours truly as someone you can fool over so easily? It was like stripping the silk out of a cocoon. Lin Fan moved his 5 fingers as the body of the shark god exploded out continuously. A universal elixir that was shaped like a colossal shark floated quietly between the heaven and earth. This universal elixir was where the essence of the shark god resided. From time to time, it would emit a godly glow, possessing all of the shark god's strength within. Absorb. Lin Fan opened up his paradise and absorbed everything instantaneously. The flesh of the shark god, which possessed an unparalleled amount of power, was sucked dry before turning into dust and being scattered into the world. Ling Wuwei and the others were long watching everything unfold before their eyes in a blank state. Too strong. This was just way too strong. For him to kill the shark god with a single palm strike. This was something that was absolutely impossible in their eyes. But, with the facts laid bare before their very eyes, they had to, even if they didn't want to believe it. Oppression. This was a downright oppression. Alright, we can continue the discussion now. Shark ancestor, how many Shenyang pills do you have? Lin Fan's mouth curled into a smirk before turning up into the void. Say, your colossal shark race has defected over to side with the ancient race. Yet, the ancient race does not even dare to show their faces around. I've got to say, you guys of the colossal shark race have really chosen the wrong side to join. Am I wrong, utmost beings? Lin Fan was looking up into the void. He had long sensed that the utmost beings of the ancient race were surveying the scene below from up in the void. But, the fact that these utmost beings of the ancient race did not dare to come forth had Lin Fan feeling disappointed. Boom! Dark clouds rumbled while lightning crackled. The utmost beings who were surveying the area were now enraged. But after rumbling for a moment, the dark clouds scattered and peace returned to the world, as though nothing had happened at all. Ha ha! Lin Fan burst out laughing, timid cowards. Right now, the face of the shark ancestor was extremely terrible. When he saw the dark clouds rumbling, he had thought that the utmost beings were here to render assistance. But after a while, he realized that the utmost beings were not going to appear at all. This had the heart of the shark ancestor feeling extremely dismal. Indeed, the rumors were true. The Mother ** Sea King Human King had already had the utmost beings of the ancient race fearing him. Mother * Sea King Human King, please spare my life. The shark ancestor prostrated on the ground. While he hated it in his heart, he did not dare to show it out at all. In the face of absolute power, he had truly admitted defeat. Shark ancestor, you're making it really meaningless now. Since that's the case, the riches of the colossal shark race shall be retrieved by yours truly personally then. Lin Fan shook his head. Since this was the case, everything would have to depend on him then. All of a sudden, Lin Fan opened his arms spread eagle, and something that shocked the shark ancestor happened.